Hello, so like all the other what ifs, this isn't mine, it's a fanfic. The link is the description if you want to check it out. Anyways, let's get into it.
Hello?
Anime demigod.
Here?
Naruto blinked the sleep away from his eyes as he awoke. He then smiled as he felt two warm bodies snuggle slightly closer to him. He looked down to his chest only to be greeted with two heads of hair, one with blue, and the other a bright blonde. He chuckled softly as he watched the sheets flutter farther down, an obvious sign of their tails swishing in pleasure. He turned and looked at the time, only to sigh. It was time to get up, as they all had to go meet with Tsunade for their assignments. He thought of a few ways to wake his newest mates up before smiling devilishly. He leant over to Yujito and turned her head up before making out with her heatedly. It took a good minute, but soon enough the lioness was awake and moaning softly into Naruto's mouth. He smiled at her as he broke the kiss and nodded his head towards the clock, which made her frown. She put her head back down, causing Naruto to roll his eyes and proceed to wake up Kiyomi as well. Another minute and he had the Biju turning the tables on him and ravishing his mouth. They broke when Yujito cleared her throat, staring at them from Naruto's chest. "I would love a repeat of last night, but we don't have the time," she said smirking. Kiyomi pouted before both girls squealed in surprise as Naruto grabbed a handful of their asses. "Get those tight asses moving, Nico-chans," he said smirking, before they both grinned at each other and proceeded to quickly tickle him. Naruto burst into a laughing fit and quickly moved away from the two girls who pouted at their fun being ruined. Naruto glared at them even though there was still a smile across his face. "Oh come on, you know you loved it," Kiyomi said as she got up, showing off her naked body and her new mate Mark. Naruto blushed and looked away, knowing that if he looked at her for too long then they wouldn't leave the house on time, and maybe for the rest of the day. Yujito gave her twin a quick tap on the head, causing her ears to droop. "Not now, Kiyomi-chan. We can get him again later," she said perversely, causing Naruto to grab his clothes and run into the bathroom, thereby making the cat twins giggle at his antics. "Come on, let's get dressed. We have to report to Tsunade for our squad assignments," she said, getting a nod from her feline friend as they both exited Naruto's room. Naruto quickly got dressed in his usual cargo pants, boots, shirt, and coat before heading downstairs, only to smile at seeing all of his girls, Kiyomi and Yujito included, enjoying a breakfast, and seemingly drilling the twins on their nightly escapade with Naruto. He chuckled as he watched Fu and Kushina both getting rather red, while Samui held a decent dusting of pink across her cheeks. The rest of his mates were obviously giggling and making lewd comments that made even Naruto blush slightly. He cleared his throat, causing everyone to look at him. "Let's get some breakfast and head to the tower. I'm sure Baa-chan is already waiting," he stated. True to his word, when the group of 10 arrived nearly 30 minutes later, Tsunade was already waiting along with several other shinobi. She smirked as the way Kiyomi and Yujito were standing. "Had a good night, girls?" she asked, getting a blush from Yujito and a V sign from Kiyomi. Naruto sighed and Tsunade chuckled. "Good for you. Naruto, any suggestions on team placements?" she asked. Naruto nodded. "I think myself, Samui-chan, Fu-chan, and Kushina-chan should head east towards Whirlpool and Wave Country. Kiyomi-chan, Yujito-chan, and Hana-chan should head west, towards River Country. Ami-chan should head north, towards Oto and Taki, taking a rather small cut as my team and Kiyomi-chan's team will cover part of her area. Hikari-chan and Anko-chan should head south, and onto the small peninsula before T-Country," he suggested. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. "Why would you send Amaterasu alone?" she asked. Naruto smirked. "Well, each team needs a tracker of some sort along with a seals master. We also need some firepower in case something goes wrong. I would send Samui-chan or Fu-chan with her, but they aren't at her level and would only serve to hinder her. Hence, they are with me," he stated. He gave both girls apologetic looks, but Fu just gave him a warming smile while Samui nodded her head somewhat stiffly towards him. "Kushina is the hitter in my group, while I'm the tracker and seals master. Hana-chan is the tracker in Kiyomi-chan's group while Kiyomi is the seals mistress, and Yujito is their backup. Anko-chan works better with Hikari-chan, both of whom have some tracking skills while Hikari-chan knows seals. In short, Ami-chan is a hard hitter, tracker, and seals mistress by herself, and breaking anyone else up wouldn't work as well," he stated. She nodded. "Okay, but I have heard rumors of Wave Country being cut off from the outside much like Kiri currently is. If you have reason to believe that Orochimaru or any of his supporters may be operating in Wave, I am authorizing you to intervene." If you can turn it to our favor, that would be wonderful, she said. Naruto looked to his group, who nodded in support. As you wish. We'd have probably helped out anyway, he said with a smile. Tsunade nodded. Very well. However, I don't like sending you out alone, she said, looking to Amaterasu. And she won't be, came a gruff voice from the crowd. Everyone turned around to see Tsum clamping on some wrist guards and Kuromaru walking silently beside her. It would be our honor to fight alongside you, Amaterasu Dano. Kuromaru added. Amaterasu smiled. I'm sure the honor will be mine. Just make sure you can keep up, she said, locking eyes with Tsum, who barked out a laugh. I'll keep up all right. Just don't slow me down, she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Tsunade smiled. In that case, I think you have your teams. I'll be sending Umbu out to patrol the borders while Genin and Chunin teams will run internal checks. Send word with one of these teams should you encounter something beyond your control. I will be assigning additional Jounins to rookie teams for added protection, she said, making everyone nod and stand at attention as her voice turned serious. She glanced to Naruto's group. Seals teams, you have your orders. Get to work, she ordered, receiving only the sound of 11 Shunshins as they left the room. West Gate, same time, 10 a.m. Naruto smiled at his group. Let's get a move on. We need to reach the borders before dark, he said before they all disappeared into the trees. None of them noticed the playful, and slightly lusty, smirk on Fu's face. His group spent the next 5 days traveling to, and along the edge of, Hot Springs country before arriving at the ocean. They encountered no suspicious activity and Naruto periodically sent several teams of clones back inland to check for possible infiltration points. Unfortunately, they were unable to find any evidence and the group was growing slightly annoyed at the lack of action. Currently, they were camped somewhere between Hot Springs and Wave, along the coast. Naruto looked at the campsite and sighed. Kushina had been staring at the ocean ever since they had arrived. He looked over to Fu and Samui only to see the two well-endowed women talking rather amicably with one another. He got up and walked over to Kushina. Is something bothering you, Kushina-chan? He asked softly, smirking when he saw her tense up, an obvious sign of him catching her off guard. Kushina turned and gave Naruto a sad smile. Nothing's wrong, Naruto-kun. Just thinking about Whirlpool, she said softly. Naruto blinked. We are near there, aren't we? He said, realizing their approximate location. Kushina nodded, unaware that the other two girls had silently joined them. I still remember the day I was sent to Konoha. It was during the Third Shinobi World War, when Iwa, Kumo, and Kiri all joined forces to destroy my home. She said, gaining a slight flinch from Samui. I was only 8 at the time, just young enough to enter the academy. They sent a large amount of shinobi, some believe it numbered near 50,000, however no one really knows how many participated in the attack. What is known, on the other hand, is the fact that the invaders lost nearly 75% of their forces before they prevailed. The Uzumakis were always known as dangerous opponents and I guess we earned our reputation, she said with a grim smile. Naruto smirked at Kushina. They definitely sound like they're related to me, he said, chuckling softly. Kushina smirked as a few tears dripped down her eyes. Yeah, definitely, she answered before wiping her eyes. The story of them doing so much damage and holding out for nearly a week under a hard siege is what inspired me to become a shinobi in the first place, she said, turning to Naruto. I'm glad I did, otherwise I'd have never met you, or anyone else I consider precious, she said, giving him a smile. Naruto smiled back and hugged her. Don't worry, Kushina-chan, we won't end up like Whirlpool, he whispered softly, hoping to waylay any fears long before they took root. Kushina smirked and sniffed. Of course we won't. 'Cause we won't let anyone tear our family apart, she said confidently, gaining smiles from the other girls, and a tighter hug from Naruto. Damn straight, Kushi-chan. Damn straight, he said softly. Fu and Samui looked to one another and silently headed back to camp, intent on keeping this a personal affair. Several minutes later, Naruto let Kushina go. I think we should join the others, Kushi-chan. We have a long day ahead of us because we should be nearing Wave Country tomorrow. Kushina smiled and nodded, wiping the last of the tears from her eyes before they headed back to camp. Next day, mainland across from Wave. Naruto and his group stood on the road that led to what appeared to be a partially constructed bridge, with mist covering the channel of water below. Well, that's one big bridge. Naruto commented, causing Kushina and Fu to giggle. It is, isn't it? Came a voice from the water in front of them. The four ninja blinked as the mist cleared enough to let them see the speaker. He was a burly man, dressed in a simple fisherman's clothes, and had a white rope around his forehead, with an X-shaped scar on his chin. He sat in a simple boat, with a motor and oars alongside it. Naruto stepped forward, not sure if this man was a threat or not. "Who are you?" he asked cautiously. The man chuckled heartily and held up his hands in surrender. "I'm but a simple fisherman, Shinobi-san. I mean you no harm." "My name is Kaiza," he replied smiling. Naruto relaxed slightly. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and these girls are my fiancés, Fu-chan, Kushina-chan, and Samui-chan," he said, motioning to each one. Fu smiled and bowed slightly to the man. Kushina just smiled and waved warmly. Samui, however, just gave him a cold glare. Kaiza's smile brightened. "My, you are a lucky man. However, may I ask why you are here?" he replied, his demeanor going from happy to serious in a split second. Naruto nodded. "Konoha has recently come under attack from Otagakure, and they are allied with creatures known as the Naga. They are serpent-like humanoid fighters, and we were able to track their scent here," he replied. Seeing Kaiza's face brighten, he guessed that the Naga had been causing problems for Wave. "In addition, our Hokage came into some information that Wave Country had fallen on hard times and assigned us a side mission to aid Wave should the Naga be operating there," he added. Kaiza's smile threatened to split his face. "Praise Kami. Those blasted Naga and that rat Gato have been causing us no amount of trouble recently. If you are really here to help us as you say, it would be my honor to have you stay at my home," he said warmly. Naruto looked back to his girls, and each one nodded their assent. He turned back to Kaiza and smiled. "Well, it would certainly be better than sleeping on the ground again." "Thank you for your hospitality," he replied happily. Kaiza's smile didn't dim in the slightest. "That is wonderful news. Please, step into my boat and I'll take you safely across these waters. Gato's men patrol them sporadically and I doubt you could avoid them as easily as I can," he said, simply referring to his knowledge of the area. Naruto nodded and the group stepped into Kaiza's boat, heading for Wave and a whole mess of trouble. Tajuna's house. Later that day, Kaiza stepped into a rather large house and yelled, "Tsunami-chan, I'm home," even as a blur tackled him excitedly. Kaiza chuckled happily as the blur revealed itself to be a child with a bucket hat and a wide goofy grin on his face. "Tio-you-san. Tio-you-san. Welcome home," the child said loudly, causing Naruto's group to smile warmly. Even Samui, a rather pretty, albeit plain-looking woman, stepped out of the kitchen with dark blue hair and black eyes. She wore a simple pink shirt with red fringes and some black pants, leading down to regular straw sandals. "Oh. Kaiza, welcome home, honey. Who is this with you?" she asked warmly. Kaiza smiled. "Thanks, hun. These are shinobi from Konohagakure. Naruto Uzumaki and his fiancés Kushina, Samui, and Fu," he said, motioning to each of them, causing them to briefly bow to their hostess. "They're here to deal with the Naga, and hopefully Gato," he said happily. Tsunami's eyes went wide and she bowed to the ninja. "Oh, thank you, Shinobi-san. Those horrible creatures have begun terrorizing this country for nearly 5 months, she said excitedly. This commotion caused a certain drunk to come stumbling in from the living room. "Oi! What's with all the racket?" an old man that reeked of sake and wearing a straw hat asked as he opened the door and stared at the people in his doorway. Naruto sighed. "Look, this is going to get redundant real fast. Let's all move to the living room and we can talk there." "Okay," he suggested, getting nods from the younger family and his girls, while the older man gave them a skeptical look. However, when Tsunami gave him a glare, the old man quickly withered and moved into the living room. They sat down, with the shinobi on one side, and the domestic family on the other. Tajuna opened his mouth, but another stern glare from Tsunami shut him up. Kushina and Fu giggled seeing this, and Naruto just shook his head. "Let us just be clear, we were ordered to search for any potential breaches in security in or around the borders of Hinokuni. Nagas are part of the forces that are currently allied against Konoha and, as such, we have been given permission to seek out and destroy any installation or base they may have," Naruto explained, causing Tajuna's eyes to widen in surprise and glee. "In addition, our Hokage has given us the go-ahead to aid Wave should we find it in disreputable standings." "Obviously, this is the case," he said. The 3 girls beside him growled softly in anger, even as Tsunami and Inari looked away sadly. Kaiza had kept the shinobi out of the main town, but they had still seen the poverty and disparity that was obviously spreading through Wave Country as this Gato character continued to buy up all the ports. Tajuna sighed. "I've been trying to build a bridge, but it's slow going. especially since Gato has begun to threaten my workers. That bridge would allow us trade routes that wouldn't be dependent on ports. It would open up whole new possibilities, he said passionately. Kaiza smiled at his father-in-law, agreed he added happily before turning to the ninja, I'm not but a simple fisherman, but I am at your service if you wish to rid this country of Gato, he said bowing low. Naruto chuckled in embarrassment, look, I appreciate that and all, but you are already doing far too much simply by housing us. The only thing I would ask of you is for any information on the Naga or Gato that you currently have, he said. Kaiza smiled, that is simple. Gato has recently taken up residence in the old daimyo's home. He currently has his people bringing in quite a bit of different materials, which we assume he is using to beef up the defenses of the manor. As for the Naga, we don't know where their base is, but they seem to congregate around the east and north sides of the island, he replied eagerly. Naruto sniffed the air and glanced to Fu, who nodded. Never trusting people makes you very good at telling when people are lying to you apparently. Naruto smiled, that is very good. Thank you for the information. We will rest the night and be on our way tomorrow, he stated. Tsunami frowned, could I persuade you to stay here for as long as you are in Wave? If you are truly helping us, it would be our honor to have you as guests, she replied warmly. Naruto once again looked at his girls. Surprisingly, he found both Fu and Kushina nodding in acceptance, while Samui just seemed to be glaring coldly at the family, as if she didn't trust them. Naruto frowned but resolved to talk to her later. She had become colder and colder without Yujito and Kiyomi around. Thank you for the offer, and I believe we will accept, he answered with a soft smile. Tsunami and Kaiza both smiled widely, while Inari giggled happily and started chattering about indestructible ninjas and other nonsense, while Tajuna huffed and headed for his room. Tsunami just shook her head at her father's behavior before showing the ninja to their rooms, one for the girls and one for Naruto, although Fu quickly claimed her life-sized plushie as they slipped into dreamland. Next day, north side of island. Naruto found himself jumping through the trees with Samui at his side. They had split up at the beginning of the day, with Naruto summoning a wolf named Jushiro to track for Kushina and Fu, whilst Samui and himself headed north. Tsunami had been nice enough to serve them breakfast, and they had happily accepted, before deciding to search for the Naga as they were the more serious threat. They still had a good hour before they reached the coastline, and Naruto couldn't pick up any scents, so he thought now would be a good time to speak with Samui. He stopped in a small clearing, forcing the large-breasted woman to do the same. She turned to him and glared slightly. Why are we stopping? She asked, crossing her arms over her chest, and reminding Naruto of his godmother. Naruto frowned. We are stopping so I can figure out what's got you in such a bad mood, he replied with an even tone. Samui stiffened and turned from him. Nothing is wrong, now let us continue the mission, she answered in a stiff voice. Bakudo no Kyu, Gaki. Way of binding number 9, strike, Naruto said as Samui suddenly found herself frozen in place with a red aura around her. You can leave when you tell me what's wrong, otherwise we will be here until night comes, he replied, feeling her angrily trying to break his seal. He smirked, I will not let you leave, Samui-chan. We need to talk, he said seriously. He felt her struggle a bit more before growling, fine. You wanna know so bad, I'll tell you. Just let me go, she answered. Naruto nodded and released his seal. Samui felt the resistance on her body vanish and she relaxed, reaching over her shoulder, she rubbed her back. Having these huge tits without having a healing factor of some kind made her back very sore very easily. She turned and glared at Naruto, who sighed. Well, he asked, gaining him an increase in the intensity of her gaze. Do you just plan it all out? Or do you fly by the seat of your pants and let your looks do all the work for you? She asked angrily. Naruto blinked in surprise. He replied stupidly. Samui tsked and turned away from him. Obviously you just let your looks do all the work. How else would you have 8 fiancés and a wife, she stated annoyed. Naruto blinked again, still not catching on. You're not making any sense. The other girls love me for who I am, not my looks. You and I are a political marriage, but I do hope you'll let me. He never got to finish as Samui growled at him and walked up to him, poking him in the chest. What I mean is that you have 9 girls to choose from when you want to get your rocks off and you act like it's nothing. You still act like each of them is special. How can any woman stand to be around you when they know you're fucking another woman behind their backs? She screamed at him. Naruto felt the need to defend himself and glared at her slightly, I never go behind their backs as you call it, and you knew what was going on when you signed up for that marriage. I know I haven't taken you on a date or anything, but I was trying to let you get accustomed to Konoha first, he replied heatedly. Samui scoffed, yeah right. You already have 8 other girls, what's one more, she replied bitterly. Naruto growled, hey. I don't lie to my girls. You're one of my fiancés, and you're precious to me just like they are, even if I don't know you that well yet, he countered passionately. Samui felt her eyes water, how can you say that? You don't even know me and I'm precious to you? How can I respond to that? How can I react to that, she replied, getting louder and more emotional by the second. How can I do my job when I can't remain composed, when you break down my barriers so easily? Like you've been doing it all your life, she yelled at him, getting to her real problem. Naruto blinked in surprise again as Samui began to cry. Slowly, he moved forward and embraced the sobbing Kunoichi. It's okay. It'll be fine, he whispered, hoping to soothe her. He had no idea what her job was, and he was a bit surprised as he thought that she honestly didn't like him. Not that she outright hated him, but being in a political marriage and not really knowing him, while not making any attempts to get close, he had thought she found him to be just another guy who was attracted to her body and not her personality. Several minutes later Samui had dried the last of her tears and gave Naruto a soft smile. Thanks Naruto-kun. I'm sorry I've been so cold, but I've just been acting that way for so long, and I'm supposed to keep you and Yugito-chan at arm's length or the council said they could revoke the marriage. So I just thought keeping myself detached would help me like it always had, she said sadly, before hiccuping and giving him a smile, one that made his heart leap into his throat. I guess that doesn't work when someone shines as bright and warm as you do Naruto-kun, she said softly. Naruto's smile threatened to split his face. That's the first time I've ever heard you compliment me, and the first time you've ever smiled too, he replied warmly before grabbing her chin and gently claiming her lips in a passionate kiss. Samui closed her eyes and opened her mouth, letting Naruto explore the moist cavern, and moaning softly as he massaged her own tongue with his before she returned the favor and explored his mouth. They broke for air after nearly 3 minutes of kissing, both of them breathing hard. Wow. Samui whispered, before blushing deeply, that was my first kiss, she added, her voice still barely a whisper. Naruto blinked in surprise before smiling warmly and kissing her chastely again. Then I'll have to make sure I take responsibility for it, won't I? He asked somewhat humorously. Samui smiled at him and nodded, still blushing. You better, but we have to get back to the mission, she added as she stood up, the two of them having fallen to their knees when Samui had cried. Naruto smiled and stood up, grabbing her hand. Date when we return? He asked. Samui shot him a warm smile. You owe it to me, she replied confidently before slowly lowering her gaze and looking away. Listen, about what I said. She started before Naruto squeezed her hand. All I heard was you complimenting me and letting me kiss you, he replied warmly, with a slight perverse undertone at the end. Samui blushed but smiled, thanks. However, I think you should know that I'm supposed to keep you and Yugito-chan from ever attacking Kumo, she said. Naruto nodded, I see. That's no problem, he replied confidently, gaining him a smile and a kiss on the cheek. You're sweet, but you still owe me that date, Naruto-kun, she said before jumping off into the trees. Naruto chuckled, I think she's gonna be more fun than Hikari-chan was, he said before giggling as he shot after his newest love interest. The two shinobi, then, spent all morning searching the northwestern side of the island. They found nothing of note, although Naruto commented that he did smell a few naga scents here and there. They stopped for lunch, nothing big, just some simple rice balls that Tsunami had been kind enough to prepare for them before they had set out. They were soon on their way again, however, and found themselves on a small cliff overlooking a very dangerous-looking ocean after having finally caught a naga's scent. The water before them was littered with jagged rocks and looked like something out of a fisherman's nightmares. The water churned and flowed at a very fast rate between the spires of rock, obviously too fast for any civilian to swim in. Naruto frowned, I smell their scent going in there but none coming out. I don't think we are going in there, he commented, looking over to his companion. However, Samui seemed to be in a trance. Her eyes were glassed over and she was staring into the dangerous waters like they were a gift to her. Naruto's frown deepened as he watched her step forward and start heading down the cliff. His eyes widened in alarm and he quickly followed her, deciding not to wake her yet lest she lose her focus and drop into the churning waters below. He quietly followed her and watched as she stepped onto the waters below, and yet, it seemed to grow calm under her step. A surprising thing as he knew her affinity was towards lightning and not water. He shook his head of that and quickly joined her atop the water. He found that the current flowed around her, and left him just enough room behind her to walk without too much difficulty. They walked for a good hour, twisting and turning through the currents and rocks before coming to a small island with a rather large cave bored into the side of it, along with torches that adorned the sides of the cave. Samui stepped into the cave. By now, Naruto had grown tired of following her and moved up beside her, intent on waking her up. That is, until a loud booming voice sounded through the cave. "Do not interfere, young one. Your mate shall not be harmed. We simply have need of her assistance," said the mysterious being. Naruto frowned and watched as Samui began to walk forward again, having stopped at the being's words. "Who are you? And what do you need from Samui-chan?" he demanded. Samui stopped once again, but this time, a deep rumbling laughter came from the cave. Naruto felt the earthquake under his feet and immediately prepared himself for a fight. Quite soon, a large serpentine figure appeared, floating before the two shinobi. It was a bright silver color, and with large teeth, 2 flowing whiskers, and 2 short arms with 3 claws on its hands. Naruto's eyes went wide. "I am a dragon, young one. Known as Tatsu. And we are in need of a summoner," he stated simply. "An oriental dragon." Naruto blinked. "Okay, then why couldn't you just ask Samui-chan instead of hypnotizing and bringing her here?" he asked seriously, knowing it wasn't a good idea to piss off big summons like Tatsu. Tatsu chuckled. "I simply gave her the ability to come here. Whether she wishes to be our summoner or not is up to her," he replied warmly as Samui's eyes lost their dazed look and she took a step back, holding her head. "Whoa, did I eat too much wasabi again?" she asked softly before her eyes took in Tatsu's form and went wide. "Definitely ate too much wasabi," she whispered. Tatsu barked out a laugh, even as Naruto chuckled at his fiancée. "Hello Samui-nii. I have a proposition for you. Would you hear me out?" he asked as he settled on the ground in front of her. Samui turned and looked to Naruto, who nodded and smiled warmly, motioning to accept. Sure. What do you need?" she asked curiously. Tatsu smiled warmly. "I am the dragon in charge of finding worthy summoners to our clan. You see, the dragons are not fire users as everyone believes. In fact, we are more aligned with lightning and wind than fire, although we do have our fire breath. I have been waiting for centuries for a person with a strong enough lightning affinity to come along so we may test them and see if they could summon our clan once again," he stated seriously. Samui's eyes widened. "And you wish to test me?" she replied with a bit of disbelief in her voice. Tatsu nodded. "The test is not life-threatening or anything, but we do hold our summoners to a high standard of conduct and morality," he stated, gaining a nod from Naruto and Samui. "Would you consent to being tested?" he asked. Samui gave the dragon a nervous look. Could I talk to Naruto-kun for a second?" she asked. Getting a nod from the dragon, she quickly grabbed Naruto and pulled him close. "What do you think?" she whispered. Naruto gave her a deadpan look. "I think a summoning scroll doesn't come along every day and you should take any chance you get," he replied. Samui chuckled nervously. "I guess you're right. Besides, it's not like I have anything to lose if I fail," she said, smiling softly. Naruto smiled supportively at her and nodded, causing her to turn around and face Tatsu. "I will take your test," she declared confidently. Tatsu smiled. "Good. Please hold still while I administer the test," he replied as he stood up and began to float again. His body suddenly glowed a pale white color and an ethereal dragon formed from the aura before roaring and slamming down onto Samui's astonished form. The aura quickly became like a bubble of light that did not allow anyone to see what was going on inside. Naruto's eyes went wide and he was about to rush forward when Tatsu's tail appeared in front of him, blocking his path. "Worry not, young one, she will be fine," he stated as the two watched the silver aura begin to swirl around Naruto's fiancée. This continued for nearly a full minute before the aura began to condense and reformed into the silver dragon. However, instead of returning to Tatsu, it coiled itself around the calm-looking Samui, who now held a katana in her hand. Samui blinked as the ethereal dragon slowly dissipated and took in her surroundings before smiling at Tatsu and Naruto. "I passed," she said happily. Naruto smiled and quickly swept her up in a hug, twirling her around, and causing her to laugh in delight. Tatsu smiled as his form began to waver. "Much luck to you, Samui-nii. The dragons have a summoner once again, he stated before his form vanished and a large ancient scroll appeared in his place. Samui blushed as Naruto finally put her down and she headed over to the scroll. She quietly picked it up and signed it before strapping it to her back, right above her butt. She smiled, "Thanks Tatsu-san. I appreciate you giving me the chance to sign this," she said softly as she turned to Naruto and smiled. "Let's go. We still have the mission to complete," she said happily. Naruto nodded and the two headed back across the water, once again protected by the dragons, before continuing their search. Tajuna's house, that night. Following the small breakdown of Samui, and the great find of the summoning contract, Naruto and Samui had quickly returned to Tajuna's house only to find a serious-looking Kushina and Fu. Naruto instantly schooled himself and landed in front of his fiancées. "What's the situation?" he asked, his tone even and in control. Kushina shook her head. "Not good. We searched the east side, as instructed, and we were able to find the Naga's base," she said, before she frowned deeply. "Unfortunately a patrol spotted us when we attempted to escape. We were able to hide for a while until they brought out quite a bit of Naga, somewhere around 1,000 I'm estimating. Jushiro stayed behind and held them off as me and Fu-chan escaped," she stated sadly. "We thought the information was more important than waiting for a rescue," she added. Naruto grimaced. "That is okay. I am glad you are alright. I will have to summon Fenrir and offer my condolences later. For now, let's get inside and think of a way to take them out," he said, gaining nods from his girls as they all headed inside. Tomorrow would be a bloody day for the shinobi. Naruto clicked his headset. "This is Okame, in position. Over," he radioed in. Radio static was his reply, until he heard another click. "This is Finikuso, in position and awaiting your orders. Over." Kushina replied. Naruto clicked his headset twice to acknowledge before another click rained over the headset. "This is Ryu, I'm ready to begin. Over." Samui's voice crackled through the device. Naruto again double-clicked his headset before a bubbly voice broke through. "This is Kabutamushi, I'm in position but I'd rather be in Naruto-kun's bed." "Over," she replied happily. Naruto's sweat dropped, while Samui and Kushina both blushed. "Why do I have the feeling she's been hanging out with Hikari and Anko?" Naruto thought before clicking his headset again. "Roger that. Operation Firestorm begins in 10 minutes. Ryu, you have point, awaiting your signal." Naruto replied before the radios went silent. Samui was currently sitting on a small ridge that adorned the north side of the Naga camp. The plan was quite simple in all reality. The Naga had no captives, and they had cleared away a large amount of trees to make their camp. Fortunately for the shinobi, this meant they could go in full force and not worry about civilian casualties. And it just so happens that Samui's new summons, in combination with Kushina's own, would make this fight nearly one-sided. Kushina was stationed to the south, awaiting Samui's signal to start her own summoning, while Naruto stood to the west of the camp. His part in the plan was probably the most important, and yet one of the simplest. Do not allow the Naga to escape inland towards Nami. He was going to assault the camp along with Kushina and Samui, but he would hold their main gate like a choke point and kill any that went his way. Of course, this left Fu with the simplest position of all. She was stationed at the east, along the shoreline. Her, now large, repertoire of water jutsu aiding her so that none of the Naga could escape into the sea. All in all, a simple yet effective plan of divide and conquer. Now all they had to worry about was unforeseen enemies or obstacles. After all, no plan survives initial contact with the enemy. Samui sighed and checked the moon's orbit in the sky. She still had 9 minutes to go before the operation was to commence. Still, this gave her time to look back and smile at the test she was given to summon her new allies. Author Akuma style, flashback no jutsu. Samui blinked and looked around. She found herself on top of a large range of mountains, with a thunderstorm, sans the rain, raging all around her. She noticed that, despite the storm, she was unaffected by the wind and electricity dancing through the air. Her gaze began to descend the mountains and noticed a rather peaceful valley, in which she could see several large serpentine creatures moving. Obviously, they were the dragons, and they came in all colors and sizes, from some that were as small as a lizard, to the largest which was as big as a full-grown whale. She whistled softly in appreciation before hearing a booming chuckle. "Good to see you appreciate our looks," said a deep baritone voice. Samui instantly tensed and tried to sense her opponent. "Who are you?" she asked. The chuckle once again assaulted her eardrums. this time as loud as thunder. "Tatsu sent you here to be tested, did he not?" The voice replied, ignoring her question. Samui frowned. "He did, but I will not ally with someone I don't know, or trust," she replied evenly, still looking around. This time, the voice laughed loudly. "Very well, but your fiancé has already met me, and I must say, what a fight," the mysterious being said, causing Samui to cock her head to the side in curiosity. She tried to remember any details of an important fight for Naruto when she heard a loud screeching sound, and noticed that the dragons down in the valley all looked to the mountaintop. Samui covered her ears but kept her eyes open, only for her jaw to drop at what she saw next. Something hit the ground in front of her, and took the form of something serpentine. Silver scales gleamed every time lightning arced across the sky, or even right onto the creature's body. It had to be as long as a great white shark, and just as deadly. Its head and body were rather smooth, obviously made for speedy attacks. The eyes were slitted golden orbs, that seemed to see right through Samui and into her soul. Its wings were rather large and along its tail it had small fan-like appendages for turns and balance. Its claws were rather vicious looking with 5 claws on each hand, although still stuck with that streamlined look. Samui felt her body tense and go rigid as the creature took a step forward, slowly stalking its way towards the wary female. The unique dragon, as Samui assumed that's what it was, soon reached the frozen woman, and circled her, its body easily wrapping around the surprised blonde. "Not bad, the brat is damn lucky, although with all the attention he gets from Kami-chan, Yami-chan, and Destiny-chan, not to mention Luck Koi, that should have been obvious," the dragon stated as it came to sit before Samui. Samui blinked, her instinctual defense fading. "You speak as if you personally know them," she said, finally relaxing as she realized this being had met Naruto before, and been impressed. The dragon let out another chuckle. "They'd flay me alive if I ever forgot them. After all, they are each a delight in my bedchambers," he stated humorously, causing Samui to instantly blush. "However, we are not here to discuss my exploits. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Sora Ryu, aka Ryujin. Tatsu indeed chose well when he allowed you to take our test, but you have a few tasks to complete before you can be called a dragon summoner," he added seriously. Samui steeled herself. "I will do my best, Ryu-sama," she replied coldly. Sora chuckled. "I am sure you will. Let us get this show on the road. You have 3 tests. The first is a simple check of your memories to see your past actions. Nothing invasive, mind you, but certainly personal," he stated as his tail came around to hover before her head. Samui stood there, awaiting his move, before realizing he was staring at her. She blinked and then blushed before nodding her head. "I am ready," she replied, giving her consent to the invasion. Sora nodded and his tail came in contact with her head, allowing him to view her life. He watched as she stood up for Yujito, and helped to protect the girl from various underhanded attempts. The several jerks that forced Samui to adopt a cold demeanor, even as she kept herself caring for those closest to her. Meeting with Killer Bee, and her team, and the events regarding Yujito and Naruto. She blinked once again as Sora retracted his tail. "First test, pass. You have a good strong loyalty, and undermined it only in the case of love. You hold yourself to a very high moral standard, and you are not afraid to speak up for what you feel is right. That is very much welcomed amongst the dragons," he stated, causing Samui to smile happily at the praise. She bowed. "Thank you for the praise, Ryu-sama," she replied warmly. Sora smirked, and it looked downright creepy seeing as he had no teeth, that is until they popped out of his gums, causing Samui to eep in surprise. "Always give credit where credit is due. A very wise saying," he replied, inwardly chuckling at her feminine squeal. "In any case, the second test is where things get dangerous," he added, causing Samui's demeanor to once again go cold, readying herself for the challenge ahead. "The test has 2 parts. The first requires you to hold on to me without chakra, as I fly at top speeds through a dangerous course. If you fall or hit something, then you will immediately be transferred back to your body without any damage. The second part is that the protective aura that has shielded you from the wind and lightning will recede during this time, and you will have to either dodge or somehow survive the elements. Let me warn you, only 2 people in history have ever taken this trial and passed," he warned, causing Samui to gulp in fear but steel herself anyways. Sora laid on the ground and motioned towards his back, showing her that there was a slight indentation where she could sit, and a rather large spike that she could wrap her hands around. She took a moment to compose herself before moving over and stepping up to the dragon. She quickly mounted him and settled herself in. "I'm ready," she stated. She saw Sora's wings expand and flap downwards before she was fighting for her perch as she jerked at his takeoff. She knew he was fast, but this was something else. Samui had been able to catch herself from the initial jerk, but she was beginning to worry as she watched the mountains pass by faster than an excited Yujito running for her favorite sushi bar. Still, she steeled herself and tightened her grip, fully intent on passing this test. Sora was impressed already. Most had fallen off just from the sheer speed, but this young woman was certainly showing her worth. He noticed her tightened grip and decided to test it. He tucked his wings and threw himself into a downward spiral, heading straight for the massive rock pillars that would serve as the dangerous course he planned to use to test her. He felt her grip slack slightly before it came back even harder. He straightened himself out just in time to begin his run. Samui knew she wouldn't be able to hold on like this forever, and she could already see the lightning arcing closer and closer to Ryujin's body. She needed to figure out a way to block that, and hold on at the same time. "I could do both with chakra, but that's against the rules. But that doesn't make any sense. No normal human could survive a lightning bolt and hold on at the same time," she thought, before going over the rules again in her head. "Wait, chakra is only mentioned in the first part. So I can use my chakra to deflect the lightning," she thought happily. A loud crack of thunder hit her ears and she watched as the stone pillar next to her be obliterated. She began to sweat nervously but called on her chakra, and used her thighs to hold on momentarily as he hands blurred at a ridiculous rate. Raiden no Yorawi. "Lightning release, lightning armor," she called as yellow lightning encased her being. Sora smirked as a lightning bolt hit his back, and he felt her grip only tighten. "It seems that Tatsu has done his job exceptionally well. I must remember to thank him when this is over," he thought even as he once again began to throw his body into a massive set of aerial maneuvers. Unfortunately for the dragon, Samui's grip never faltered, even as he neared the end of the towers. Soon enough, Samui found them flying through open air once again. "Hold on, Samui-san, we have one last stop to make." "Oh, and congratulations, you passed the second test," once again with flying colors he stated, causing Samui to smile and drop her jutsu, even as she felt the wind recede since the protective aura was once again in place. Samui smiled happily as she realized she was very close to gaining some powerful new allies, and was able to brace herself as she noticed the ground was fast approaching. Sora's landing was a bit rough for Samui, but she didn't fall off. She was, however, jostled rather badly and it took her a moment to realize he had stopped moving and that she could get off. She slipped off the silver dragon and landed on the ground with wobbly legs, but she was still able to take in her surroundings. They were in the valley that she had seen when she arrived here, but she noticed that only young dragons were in this field. The final test is the simplest, and, at the same time, the most difficult. I will explain the test once you pass, or fail. Good luck. Sora said before he once again took to the air. Samui blinked in confusion and looked around, attempting to figure out exactly what the final test would be. Not seeing anything dangerous, she decided to have a look around. Samui spent at least an hour wandering the grassy plain in which Sora had dumped her, and was beginning to get bored. She noticed several times that the young dragons were always around, but never close enough for her to see clearly. She sighed and sat down on a rather large rock, content to wait for the final test. She sat silently for several minutes before the grass before her rustled softly. Samui blinked and looked to the grass only to see a bright gold dragon hatchling slowly emerging from the grass. She noticed that the hatchling was very small, probably only big enough to wrap around her forearm once. Still, her golden scales shone beautifully in the sunlight. The hatchling was curious as to who this person was and slowly moved forward, its head cocked to the side in confusion and ready to bolt at a moment's notice. Samui took notice of this and smiled warmly. "Come here, little one, I won't hurt you," she said softly, extending her hand slowly. The hatchling tensed and looked into Samui's eyes. She saw no signs of deceit and slowly moved forward, eventually coming to rest her snout in Samui's hand. Samui gently rubbed the hatchling's nose, causing the small creature to release a soft purr of approval. Eventually Samui found herself holding the small lizard-like creature in her lap, even as she continued to purr under Samui's skillful hands. Samui chuckled, "You're just a little cutie. But, I think I need to go search for Sora-sama now," she said standing up. The hatchling whined and flew up to her shoulders, wrapping itself around her neck. Samui chuckled again. All right, You can come with me, she said, reaching up and scratching the hatchling under the chin, gaining another purr from her little friend. Samui was about to move forward when she heard the screeching sound once again and Sora landed before her. Samui eyed his warily even as Sora smirked at seeing the small dragon wrapped around her neck. It would seem you have passed the final test as well. Congratulations once again Samui-sama, Dragon Summoner, he stated, causing Samui's jaw to drop. Sora chuckled and Samui composed herself. What test? She asked, seeing as she had no idea what was going on. Sora smirked again. That still freaked Samui out. The final test is to determine whether or not one of our young would bond with you. You see, we do not have a sage or lead summoner as most summons do, rather we take one summoner at a time and bond ourselves to them through one of our hatchlings. The young one you have there, he said, using his tail to point to the small dragon, is your companion from now until you die. I will let her explain the rest, but I have one thing to teach you before we leave here, he said, causing Samui to nod. Suddenly, the small dragon unwrapped itself and darted down her arm, wrapping her tail around Samui's hand before she glowed, causing Samui to shield her eyes. As the glow faded, Samui found herself holding a beautiful golden katana with the kanji for Yoko down the side. Suddenly a bright bubbly voice echoed in Samui's mind, Hi. I'm Yoko, pleasure to meet ya. By the way, before we get started, my name means sunshine, not demon fox. Anyways, I'll be your companion for quite some time so I hope we can be great friends, the young dragon said to Samui. Samui blinked, surprised by the new sensation before smiling softly. Indeed, I would like to be your friend very much Yoko-chan. Samui replied. Yoko squealed loudly, causing Samui to grip her head with her free hand, Yay. We're gonna be the bestest of friends Samui-chan. But I better tell you why I'm a sword before Ryujin-sama gets mad at me. You see, every bonded dragon takes the form of a weapon for their summoner. This is because the dragons teach a very old and secret attack to their summoners, which can only be used when you channel your chakra through me. You may ask, well, what makes this attack so secret? Well, it uses very little chakra but it causes a lot of destruction. Unfortunately, you can't spam it as it tires me out every time you use it. Understand? She asked. Samui nodded. Got it. So I'm guessing Sora-sama will teach me this technique, she asked out loud, forgetting to speak mentally. Sora chuckled, yes, I will. First, one little thing about Yoko-chan. She is a very special dragon to our brood so please take good care of her. Now that you know what's going on. Let's begin, after all, learning your specialized Ryuha, Dragon Strike, will take some time. Sora said. Author Tenshi style, flashback no Jutsukai. Samui smiled, looking at the bright blade hanging on her waist. All Kyumo shinobi were taught to use a blade to at least Chunin level, and she was glad she had kept up the training. She may not be a master, but she could use Yoko rather well. She would have to find a swordsman to teach her when she got back to Konoha though, no sense in having a weapon that you couldn't master. She cleared her thoughts and looked to the moon once again. It was time. She flashed through several hand signs before slamming her hand on the ground. Kuki-yos no jutsu. Summoning technique, she said calmly, trying to not give away her position too early. Out of the smoke appeared a rather large dragon, just big enough to hide on the ridge and not be seen. Said dragon was a deep oceanic blue in color with bright golden eyes. Hello Samui-sama. It is an honor to be the first dragon summoned to the mortal plane in nearly a century. Do you need my assistance? The dragon asked with a soft musical voice. Samui smiled and bowed. Yes I do Dragon-san. Below us sits a camp of Naga, they are currently at war with my homeland and we wish to dispose of them. Would you aid me in driving them out? She asked. The dragon smiled back, indeed, I would be most eager to assist you. My name is Amaya, and I am aligned with water and lightning. Might I suggest a combined assault? She said as her smile turned devious. Samui smirked. I think we are going to be great friends Amaya-chan, she replied. Oi don't forget me. Yoko added airily. Samui and Amaya chuckled. Never Yoko-chan, let us begin. Samui said darkly. With Kushina, same time. Kushina watched as a cloud of smoke dissipated from up on the ridge while she sat in the trees to the south of the camp. She smiled and began her own summoning. Just as Amaya came over the edge, with Samui standing atop her head, a large phoenix appeared opposite the camp, with Kushina flying beside it. This camp is filled with enemies. Please aid us Banako-kun, she said. The phoenix, now named Binako, let loose a loud screech, causing the Naga to finally take notice of the two giant summons surrounding their camp. As you wish, Kushina-sama, let us burn them all to ashes, he added before the two blasted forward. Binako and Ayama reached the southern and northern walls at the same time, each unleashing a devastating ability upon their enemies. Finikusa Bakuden, Phoenix Bomb, and, Suten, Bakuzu Ishiha. Water Release, Exploding Water Colliding Wave, were announced as a fireball landed on the southern side of the camp and quickly spread north, fanned by Binako's wings, and a large wave of water bubbled up and crashed over the northern edge of camp, rushing to meet the flames. Unfortunately, Amaya's Justa didn't do much damage to the Naga, that is until Samui decided to join in. Raiten, Shiroi Kaminari. Lightning Release, White Lightning, she yelled. A bolt of white lightning, just as the name implied, burst forth from her fingertips and hit the water, electrocuting all the Naga caught in the combination attack. Amaya and Binako nodded to one another as the two, turn 3, attack collided, effectively turning the battlefield into a superheated, and supercharged, mist. Between the two, it was not an understatement to say they had demolished a good third of the camp. However, that wasn't enough for Samui and Kushina. Kushina turned to the east, and curled into a ball, bringing her wings before her, before throwing them wide, yelling, Finikusu no Danmaku. Phoenix's barrage, she yelled as dozens of fiery feathers darted towards the ground, catching several fleeing Naga unawares. Samui smirked as she turned to the west, there was no way she was gonna let Kushina outdo her if she could help it. She raised her sword straight up and poured her chakra into Yoko, causing Yoko to squeal in excitement. Raryuaha! Lightning Dragon Strike, she yelled, bringing her sword down and unleashing a ferocious golden dragon made of lightning that streaked through several Naga, incinerating them. With Naruto. Naruto, who was watching from the west, whistled in appreciation, even as he saw droves of Naga heading his way. He smirked, Samui-chan and Kushina-chan sure aren't giving them any room. Well, guess I better do my part, he said as he cut down the first of the Naga fleeing his way. He never noticed the growing light coming up the path behind him. With Fu slammed her fist into another Naga and sent it flying back, catching two more before impacting a tree with an audible crack. They were dead. She chuckled as she watched Kushina hound the Naga towards her position. Yeah, keep 'em coming. I can do this all night, she said happily as she launched herself into several devastating moves that she had learned from both Guy and Tsunade. The poor Naga never stood a chance. Back with Kushina and Samui. The fight raged for a good 3 hours before the girls could tell that most Naga had left the area. They sighed and smiled to the summons before a glowing portal surrounded by green flames appeared in the middle of camp. Out stepped 3 necromancers, each with a silver robe. They took in the situation around them before the leader scowled at the two women. You will pay for what you have done. We are necromancers of the first order. Prepare to die, he growled as the 3 mages became encased in bone armors. Samui and Kushina looked to one another before nodding. Their summons had long since been dismissed as they had expended the chakra afforded them, although there was still plenty of water left over from Amaya's attack. The 2 females quickly adopted defensive stances, their swords held in front of their bodies. I'll take the 2 on the right, you got the left. Give me a hand when you're done. Kushina said, smirking at the end. Samui smirked back, just don't go dying on me. Naruto-kun would be so sad, she replied somewhat teasingly. Kushina just giggled and dodged the first blast of hellfire before the 2 kunoichi raced forward, intent on destroying the newest enemies. Samui reached her opponent first and went to slice him at the waist with chakra in her strike. The necromancer just smirked as his bone armor blocked the hit, however he was surprised when it still sent him head over heels and right into a destroyed Naga tent. Samui glanced at her teammate just in time to see her nimbly twist her body between 2 attacks before she launched herself at the leader. Samui chuckled and turned her attention back to her own fight. Kushina smirked as she continued to run circles around the 2 necromancers. Their attacks were powerful, but no ninja below mid-chunin would ever be hit by them. That being said, she ducked under another blast of hellfire and jumped in the air, targeting the supposed leader. Ryutsuzan, she called as her blade struck the skull-like armor on the leader's head. Unfortunately, her attack did not pierce the armor, much to her surprise. The leader laughed even as he thrust his arms forward, sharp knives of bone erupting from his armor and nearly impaling Kushina, had she not jumped away. Pathetic. I will enjoy killing you, he said insanely. Kushina huffed and went back to dodging, and trying to figure out how to break their armor. Fortunately, she wouldn't have to. Samui noticed Kushina's attack and frowned. The Ryutsuzan was a very powerful attack, and if it couldn't break their armors, then this was going to be a tough fight. The landscape was already burning around them, having been hit with hellfire blasts very often, and she knew they were beginning to tire. Samui-chan. Why don't we blast him at point-blank range? Yoko's normally bubbly voice had turned quite serious as she mentioned this plan, and Samui thought on it for a second before sending her agreement to her small ally. Yoko seemed to thrum with excitement even as Samui turned her steely gaze upon her enemy. I will kill you in the name of our Lord. Prepare to die, the crazy necromancer yelled as he dashed forward, intent on hitting Samui at close range. Samui narrowed her eyes and channeled plenty of chakra into her blade. Just as the necromancer closed the distance and thrust his flaming hand forward, Samui dropped to a knee and lashed out with her blade, calmly replying to his battle cry with a rare aha. Unfortunately for the necromancer, his armor stopped nothing this time as Yoko slid right through it before releasing the attack right through his midsection, frying him in under a second. The electric attack, however, didn't stop there. It blasted out of the dead fanatic's back and into the forest, carving a large gorge in the ground. Samui panted as she realized she had put far too much into that attack and would need a minute to recover. She was still able to look over to Kushina, who was actually surprised by Samui's attack. Still, that lasted only a second as they both heard loud wails come from the other necromancers. Kushina winced at the loud wails and returned her full attention to her opponents, both of whom now had glowing silver eyes. You will pay for killing our comrade. Damudo no Senshi, the leader roared as the two necromancers were encased in a familiar green flame. Kushina mentally groaned as she knew this technique was very annoying and hard to beat, that is until she noted that there was still plenty of water left for her to use on the necromancers. Prepare to die, the leader spoke once again as the two necromancers heft their sword and shields. Kushina scoffed and sheathed her sword, standing in a puddle of water. You guys made a very stupid mistake. Facing me as giant fire creatures when surrounded by water, she said, giving them a raised eyebrow, I knew you were insane, but not suicidal, she taunted. The necromancer growled and raised his sword. Just die, you worthless woman, he replied as he brought his sword down. Kushina smirked. Sutten, Suiryuadon no Jutsu. Water release, water dragon technique, she yelled as a large dragon made of water formed behind her and streaked towards the flaming giant. Unfortunately, they seemed to have learned from past mistakes as the necromancer's lackey jumped in front and blocked the water dragon with his shield. Kushina's eyes widened and she swiftly jumped to the right, narrowly avoiding the descending weapon. The necromancer smirked, you will not beat us so easily, mortal. We know our weaknesses and you will not get the chance to exploit them, he yelled as the two giants began to work in tandem as they attacked the red-headed beauty. Samui mentally growled as she noticed that they had ignored her, but knew she wouldn't be of much help against them. Her affinities would be useless and she didn't have enough chakra left to summon. Kushina, on the other hand, was well deserving of her title of Sennin and was still running circles around the flaming creatures. She couldn't harm them, though, and she knew she was in a bit of a bind. Unfortunately for the necromancers, they were not trained in the ninja ways, otherwise they would have paid more attention to their surroundings. As it was, they were sorely unprepared when a shout of Sutten, Deijuryuadon no Jutsu. Water release, great water dragon technique, followed by an enormous water dragon slamming into the lackey, effectively killing him. The leader turned around, completely shocked only to find a green-haired, orange-eyed, woman slam her fist into his face and flat out deck him. Kushina and Samui both smiled as Fu landed next to Samui. Hey now, don't keep all the fun to yourselves, she said happily. Kushina chuckled and noticed the still stunned necromancer. Never, unfortunately, you're gonna have to skip this one. Sutten, Bakuzu Ishiha, she yelled as the remaining water surged and drenched the necromancer, also killing him. Fu pouted. That wasn't fair, she said childishly. Samui shook her head, even as she stood up, having finally caught her breath. Life is rarely fair, Fu-chan, you know that, she said. Fu just stuck her tongue out at Samui, which caused both girls to laugh. Kushina smiled. Well, mission accomplished, let's go find Naruto-kun, she said, gaining nods from her two fellow Naruto lovers. They quickly headed for the edge of camp, and Sun found themselves staring at Naruto sitting on a fat midget's back, with the midget yelling at him to get off. They were also aware of a small army that was currently strewn across the ground, presumably killed by Naruto. He smiled at them. "Yo," he said in a very Kakashi-like way, causing them to sweat drop. Samui stepped forward. Who's the midget?" she asked, causing said midget to thrash more under Naruto, until he slammed his sheathed blade into his neck, knocking him unconscious. Naruto stood up and picked up the small man, ignoring the destroyed army behind him. "Oh, this is Gato. Dick tried to blindside me with a small army. I thought it'd be best to let the village deal with him," he replied, even as he began to walk back towards Wave. Kushina chuckled darkly. "Yes, I think that would be most fitting," she agreed, with Fu and Samui nodding. Naruto smirked at them before they all disappeared into the trees. Naruto's group, 3 days later. Naruto and his fiancées had started heading home, seeing as they were done with their patrols. Wave was free and would be trading with them as soon as their bridge was done, which would be within the week since Gato had been publicly executed. The group was currently a day away from Konoha, and they were all sitting around the campfire, relishing in their victory. They had delivered Gato to Wave, who had made a spectacle of his death, even as the ninja had raided his home and redistributed his wealth back to the impoverished nation. They had spent a day doing so before Tajuna had been voted as the leader of Wave, and promised them a trade treaty as soon as the bridge was finished. So, now they were heading home. Samui smiled as she watched Fu and Kushina snuggling with Naruto. She would probably be joining them, but she was currently running a whetstone up and down Yoko's sword form, with said dragon purring loudly in her mind. She giggled as she watched Naruto step away from the two girls so he could make sure the dinner didn't burn. "Yoko-chan, would you like to properly meet Naruto-kun, Fu-chan, and Kushina-chan?" she asked warmly as she finished her maintenance. Yoko was silent for a moment. Will they like me?" she asked nervously. Samui chuckled, causing her 3 companions to look at her. "Of course they will. Now stop being a scaredy cat," she replied confidently. Yoko didn't respond, but she soon glowed and shifted into her dragon form whilst in Samui's lap. Naruto, Fu, and Kushina all blinked at the nervous-looking serpentine form before Samui cleared her throat. "Everyone, this is my personal summon, Yoko. As you saw, she is also my weapon and stays with me almost constantly. Say hello, Yoko-chan, there's no reason to be scared," she said, nudging the small dragon forward. Yoko raised her head slightly and her tail waved at Samui's 3 companions. "Hi," she said in a nervous voice. The 3 humans blinked before Naruto smiled warmly, reaching forward and scratching under her chin. "Hello there, little one. I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Samui-chan's fiancé. It's good to meet you," he said soothingly. Yoko purred softly at the touch, which caused the girls to all smile, though Samui's was the widest. She'd only known Yoko for a few days, but anytime she had wanted to show Yoko to her friends, she seemed to retreat. Samui guessed that Yoko was a shy girl, but also a happy and overexcited one when she is comfortable with someone. Kushina and Fu each joined in petting the young dragon and introduced themselves. Yoko was soon flitting around the camp happily and messing with Naruto. Hell, she blasted his butt with fire when he was putting the fire out. He had been a little annoyed but ended up just tickling the small dragon, which surprised everyone considering they didn't think she would be ticklish, until they had turned in for the night. Once everyone had started to lay down, Yoko had gone to turn back into her sword form when Samui grabbed her and held her tight to her chest. "There's no reason for you to sleep like that, Yoko-chan. Why don't you cuddle with me?" Samui suggested, although she wasn't gonna take no for an answer. Yoko's eyes went wide before she snuggled into Samui's arms with a content sigh, even as Samui cradled the small creature against her generous bosom. Samui quickly laid in her own bedroll and fell asleep, missing the wistful whisper of Kaa-san as she drifted off to sleep. Next day, Hokage office, 9 p.m. Naruto and Kushina stood before Tsunade as they recounted the results of their mission. Fu and Samui had both been dismissed by Kushina, saying that they didn't need to be present for the debriefing since it was so late. Tsunade smiled at the 2 Uzumakis. "Well done, to you and the other 2. You'll be paid well for your outstanding performance," she said happily. Kushina and Naruto just smiled. Kushina eyed Tsunade's desk and mentally smirked. There was hardly anything there. Just a few sheets of paper and an empty sake cup. Tsunade was about to dismiss them when Shizun walked in. "Tsunade-sama, a squad of Jonin has returned from border patrol with serious injuries and the hospital is asking for your immediate assistance," she said. Tsunade sighed. "Looks like I'm gonna be working all night." "You are dismissed for now," she said, causing 6 shadows to leave the room. She turned to Kushina but said Redhead beat her to the punch. Tsunade-chan. I forgot, I asked Minato to leave something of mine in his vault behind his picture, do you think I could get that now? I'll lock up after I'm done, she asked, using her puppy dog pout no jutsu. Tsunade rolled her eyes, you don't need to convince me, honey. Just lock up after, she said as she left the room with Shizuan. Naruto readied himself for a shunshin when a red and blue barrier went up inside the room. He raised an eyebrow as Kushina grabbed the stuff on Tsunade's desk and shoved them in her top drawer. His eyebrow raised further still when Kushina sat on the desk with her legs crossed, trying her hardest to look sexy, and doing an amazing job of it. I thought you had something in Toyu-san's vault. Naruto asked, already getting the feeling that Kushina had lied. Kushina giggled, before giving Naruto a lustful look. Nope, just said that to get Tsunade-chan out of here, she said, before turning and running her hand over the desk. You know, Minato and I never got to christen this desk. Would you like to get an early start on that, Hokage-sama, she asked, raising her eyes from the desk and giving Naruto the sexiest look she could. Lemon start. Please skip to next bold line if underage. Naruto's jaw dropped for a second, even as Kushina began to undo her top, exposing her DD breasts to the world. Naruto shook his head and moved forward, capturing Kushina's mouth in a heated kiss. Kushina mentally smirked and cheered as Naruto removed the rest of her top, leaving her in black biker shorts, ninja sandals, and her bra. Naruto broke the kiss, even as his hands nimbly removed her bra. This is rather sudden, what brought this on? He asked even as his mouth claimed her right tit. Kushina moaned loudly as he began to suck on her tit, even as his left hand massaged her free milk machine. Why you always try to set the mood, Naruto Kuahi-kun, she said, thoroughly enjoying his ministrations. I just want you. Besides, she added, causing him to look in her eye, being spontaneously fucked is exciting. Wouldn't it be so hot to just break down in the middle of a training session and have hot sweaty sex, she asked, before gasping softly as he switched breasts. Naruto mentally agreed with his red-headed fiancé, and sucked harder on her tits. Kushina began panting, her own body heating up and definitely ready for the main event, when a strange sensation in her breasts caused her to forestall on asking Naruto to take her. She pressed his head closer to her breast and moaned loudly as she felt something emerge from her tit, only for Naruto to greedily suck it down. Naruto's eyes widened as he felt Kushina's milk begin to flow into his mouth, not that he was complaining. It had a somewhat sweet taste to it and he found it was a very refreshing drink. He heard Kushina moan loudly and sucked that tit a few more times before switching and suckling her first tit hard, soon earning himself the milky treat he wished for. Kushina was surprised that breastfeeding felt so damn good. Sure, Naruto was hardly a baby, but having her milk sucked out by her lover was definitely hot, and she would love to have Naruto suckle her tits like this every time they made love. She ran her hands through his hair and moaned softly, giving him a loving smile, even if he couldn't see it. That's it, drink it all up Naruto-kun, she said softly. Naruto mentally smirked and looked up, catching her loving smile, before letting go of her tit, much to her disappointment. She's been wonderful to me, and not once has she really treated me like a child she could control. Maybe I can give her a little something to say thank you, and be kinky and mischievous at the same time, he thought with a devious smile. He had an odd feeling and turned around, only to find the Hokage pictures staring straight at them. He grumbled, perverted old man watching me milk my Kaa-san, he said, causing Kushina to gasp. Kushina's eyes were wide, had she heard him right? "Ene Naruto," she stuttered out in surprise. Naruto turned and gave her a wide smile, "You heard right, you've been nothing but loving to me Kushina-chan, so I'd like to propose a little game with you," he said, his devious smile returning. Kushina blinked and nodded, even as Naruto began to get undressed, much to her delight. "I'll call you Kaa-san, when we make love, and the morning after. I think it'd be mighty kinky to call you that as we get to know each other, and we can play a prank on Hikari and Anko," he said as he moved forward, finally naked. He refrained from being crude in his words, but she understood what he meant. Kushina thought about it for a second before smiling seductively. "Oh, I think I'd love to feed my little Sachi-kun some more," she said, before gently spreading her legs as Naruto gripped her shorts. "And maybe Sachi-kun wants to make his Kaa-san pregnant?" she asked. Naruto smirked, happy she had caught on to his game so fast. "I'm sure I'd love to see that belly full, and Kaa-san's breasts leaking her milk as I screw her into a coma," he said as he slipped her shorts off. Kushina giggled. "I think that would be very fun," she said happily as he pulled her panties off. causing Naruto to get his first look at his fiancée's tight love hole. She was shaved, which honestly surprised Naruto, considering that Kushina's hair was the longest of all his lovers. Naruto noticed that her pussy lips were practically soaked with her juices, which only turned him on as he knew she was ready for their consummation, and he decided to take a taste of her nether juices before he claimed her as his own. Kushina was pleasantly surprised when Naruto began to lick her pussy, and she happily grabbed his head and massaged his scalp to encourage his actions. She had no intentions of coming without Naruto's cock buried inside her however, so she only let him taste her for a minute or so before pulling his head away from her Milky Way and giving him a lustful look. "You're very skilled with that tongue, Sachi-kun, but Kaa-san needs her Sachi's man-meat to fill the hole he left in her womb," she said in seductively forceful tone. Naruto smirked and stood up, before laying on top of his lover, rubbing his large member up and down her sensitive labia. "You just wanna be pregnant again, Kaa-san? Aren't I enough for you?" he asked with a mocking, and then hurt tone. Kushina moaned softly as he continued to tease her. Little did she know, that Naruto hadn't slept with any of his other girls in weeks and he was ready for a little loving. "Of course you are Sachi-kun, but wouldn't you like a little sister or brother?" she asked, all the while trying to adjust so he would penetrate her. Naruto chuckled and kissed her deeply. "Wouldn't they be my Sachi or Mizume?" he asked huskily, and he finally placed himself at her entrance. Kushina's eyes went wide as his head finally entered into her burning hot pussy. "Who cares? Just fuck me," she cried, growing tired of the games and teasing, even if it was hot. Naruto smirked and shoved a generous amount into Kushina's hot hole. "As you wish, Kaa-san," he said huskily, before pushing himself deeper and deeper into his newest lover, before he finally bottomed out against her cervix. Kushina's mouth was open in an O position and her eyes were wide as Naruto finally filled her aching pussy with his pull. She certainly wasn't complaining as this was the biggest cock she had ever seen, and it filled her oh so deliciously. She moaned softly as she felt Naruto shift slightly to get a better position for the coming actions. She focused on him, just as he smiled, and began to thoroughly claim her pussy as his own. Naruto grunted as he bottomed out. Shit, Kushina was tight. Sure, his other lovers had been relatively tight, but Kushina is pushing it to a new level. It felt like her pussy had a vice grip on his dick. Not that he was complaining, mind you. He enjoyed her hole for a few moments before bracing himself so he could give her exactly what she wanted, and what his own body was clearly yearning for. Naruto smiled at Kushina and began to move, causing low moans and gentle scrapping sound to echo throughout the office. "Call me your tight Kaa-san," Naruto said, still liking the way that sounded as he pounded into his newest lover. Kushina smirked, her breasts bouncing in concentric circles even as the ache in her pussy disappeared to be replaced with a growing knot in her stomach. "Uzumaki regeneration honey, I'll be this tight every time we make love," she said with pride, before her voice turned somewhat childish, with a slight seductive tone to it. "Would Sachi-kun like that?" she asked, even as her legs wrapped around his waist. Naruto moaned loudly and began to pick up the pace. "I'd like that very much, Kaa-san, almost as much as I love drinking your milk," he said happily. Naruto was very pleased with the way Kushina was handling this. She made it both kinky and sexy at the same time, which was extremely hot. He felt his own end nearing, so he reached forward and began to suck on Kushina's tit. This proved too much for the redhead as she came, squirting milk from her breasts, even as her pussy rhythmically throbbed around Naruto's cock, causing his own orgasm to hit. Kushina gasped as her orgasm hit. She hadn't expected Naruto to attack her breast again, but she was definitely not going to complain. She had no idea that she could squirt from her breasts, but she would be sure to remember that because she could feel Naruto's mouth still latched onto her breast, gulping down the liquid like a lifeline. Still, her pussy felt magnificent. She never knew that her orgasm could make her entire body tense like this. Minato was a good lover, but he hadn't always caused her to orgasm, despite his best efforts. She felt her nether regions moving against Naruto's cock and moaned happily as his cock finally exploded inside her, pressing her cervix open and pushing the sperm right where nature intended them to go. Naruto grunted as he impaled himself into his newest lover. Unlike his other mates, Kushina's pussy didn't tighten when she came, which was very unusual. Instead it massaged him rhythmically, in a way that Naruto was sure he'd never be able to resist coming inside her. He could feel her breast still supplying milk, and he greedily gulped it down, even as he felt her other breast continue to spray its contents over the desk and their bodies. He felt her pussy slowing down, even as his own orgasm tapered off, and gently let her breast go, the remnants of her milk leaking down her breast. "Wow!" Kushina whispered, as Naruto gently extracted himself from his lover. Naruto smirked. "That good huh?" he asked. Kushina gave him a half-hearted glare. "Don't get cocky with me," she said, causing Naruto to just roll his eyes. Kushina huffed, but gave him a warm smile. "But yes, that good. I guess having several lovers is good for something," she added. Naruto sighed but nodded. "Yeah," he said as he laid next to Kushina on the desk, barely having enough room to do so. They laid there for a few minutes, before Kushina smirked and rolled over, putting herself on top of Naruto. Naruto blinked. "What are you doing?" he asked. Kushina smiled at him and kissed him deeply. "There's one position I've always wanted to try. Think you can satisfy me?" she asked seductively. Naruto smirked right back. "Definitely," he replied confidently. Kushina smirked and gave him a quick peck. "Good, then we need to clean up and head home. There isn't enough padding in here for what I want to do," she said as she grabbed her clothes, which had some wet spots. Naruto rolled his eyes and grabbed his own clothes before making some cage bunshin. "Clean up," he ordered. The clones grumbled but Kushina giggled. "I forgot about that. Still, good idea. Let's go," she said as she disappeared, still naked. Naruto rolled his eyes and disappeared as well. Naruto's room, same time. Naruto reappeared in his own room, and noticed that Kushina was currently sitting on the bed, with a seductive smile on her face. "Shall we get this started then?" she asked huskily. Naruto chuckled and dropped his clothes, his impressive member standing tall and proud, making Kushinba gaze at the instrument of pleasure with lust. "I see you've taken a shine to Junior Naruto," Naruto commented with a smirk. Kushina blinked before blushing slightly. "If I have, then it's not a bad thing because I plan on draining him for several batches of kids," she said boldly. That caused Naruto to blush. "Why, you really mean that?" he asked. His other lovers had rarely mentioned children, even if they had every intention of getting pregnant, and it was a soft spot for Naruto. Kushina immediately noticed his slight change and smiled warmly. "Of course I do. We all do, you know that," she said as she hugged her lover. Naruto hugged her back, warmth blossoming in his heart. "Thanks, Kushina-chan. It's nice to hear you say it," he replied lovingly. Kushina just gave him a loving smile. "Right, so what did you want to do?" he asked, the touching moment gone as he was ready to give Kushina what she wanted, several times over. Kushina smiled, then blushed. Just follow what I say, okay? It may seem uncomfortable for me but I promise you won't be doing anything I don't want," she replied, gaining a nod from Naruto. She laid down on the bed and motioned for Naruto to come forward. He stopped between her knees. "Okay, grab my butt and push it up, but stand with it as well," Kushina said, causing Naruto to push her ass up into the air, up until only her upper back and neck were still on the bed. "Stop," she said. Naruto noticed this position and blushed, knowing what she was going to ask. Kushina smirked. "Now Sachi-kun, take that giant jackhammer you have there and pile drive your Kaa-san into a coma," she said. Naruto blushed but nodded, carefully guiding himself into Kushina. He grabbed her ankles to keep her up, and fed more and more of himself into her until he bottomed out once again. He looked down to see Kushina nearly cross-eyed, obviously enjoying this position. Naruto smirked and rose up before slamming his cock right back into her tight canal, earning a loud moan from his lover. Naruto noticed this and began to do exactly as she asked, pile driving her right into his bed. Kushina was cross-eyed. She hadn't told Naruto, but she loved a good hard fucking, and she had never got the chance to try this particular position out. Needless to say, she was seriously considering making this her default sex position because the way Naruto pounded her pussy into submission felt absolutely fantastic. She moaned loudly as he sped up slightly, urging him to pound her harder. Naruto was very happy with this new way of pleasuring his lover. He could tell she was really loving it, and he planned on making her ride through at least 2 orgasms before he gave out. Noticing that his balls were slapping loudly onto her ass and being stimulated by the way their bodies met, he knew he would have to do something drastic to do what he planned. That was when he focused on her breasts and noticed that they were leaking milk. A devious idea crossed his mind and he impaled himself into Kushina, letting go of her legs and letting them hook on his shoulders as he brought his hands forward. Kushina groaned in displeasure as she opened her eyes to give Naruto a half glare. "Why'd you?" She never got to finish as a loud moan escaped her throat. Kushina quickly looked at her body, trying to figure where that delicious pleasure was coming from, even as Naruto began to pound her pussy once again. She was very happy, and pleasantly surprised, to find two other Narutos putting their tongues to use as they lapped up her breast milk. Naruto smirked down at his lover, having grabbed her ankles again and resumed his thorough plundering of her pussy. "Do you like it, Kaa-san? Does Kaa-san like having her nipples milked while being fucked by her Sachi?" he asked, watching as Kushina began to pant for breath, a clear sign her orgasm was approaching. Kushina's eyes went wide at the dirty talk and she moaned loudly in appreciation. "I love it. Fuck me harder," she yelled, desperately trying to stave off her orgasm for just a bit longer. Naruto smirked and thrust himself deep inside his lover. "Good, then come all over my cock, Kaa-san," he said huskily. Kushina couldn't take it and screamed her release even as her pussy and breasts produced their treasured nectar to her lover. Kushina could swear that she lost her mind as she felt her body go tense. She was acutely aware of the tongues that were furiously working her nipples, and the large cock that was currently impaled into her most holy place. She moaned loudly as she felt her orgasm finally begin to fade, only to be thrown right back into another as Naruto began to move again. Naruto couldn't take it anymore. He knew that Kushina was orgasming under him, but her pussy was just too good. That massaging thing her pussy did was driving him crazy, and he could already feel his second orgasm approaching fast. So, when he felt her slowing down, he began to really work himself into her tight hole, loving how she felt as he screwed her into a coma, just like she asked. Kushina's mouth was open and her tongue out of her mouth as she was screwed just as hard as she wanted. She had thought that her earlier orgasms were awesome, but this was blowing her mind. Naruto continued to pound into her as she experienced orgasm after orgasm, her Uzumaki stamina being put the test, and holding up quite nicely. Soon though, she felt Naruto grunt and bury himself in her, spewing his seed into her willing womb. Naruto grunted deeply as his orgasm hit, burying himself deeply into his lover and letting loose his boiling load right into her womb. She hadn't stopped orgasming since her second one of the night, and Naruto was thoroughly enjoying the way his cock was milked for every ounce of seed he had. He felt his own orgasm slowly nod off, even as he got the information that all his clones were done, with the ones on Kushina's breasts having dispelled as well. Kushina had only moaned softly as Naruto pumped her womb to the brim with his seed. Her earlier orgasms had sapped her strength, but that didn't mean her body wasn't up to the task of milking Naruto for everything he had. She actually smiled as she felt the two clones disperse, and Naruto lay her on the bed, his cock still buried in her wonderfully sore pussy. Lemon end. It's mostly safe, kitties. Naruto slowly extracted himself from Kushina and smiled warmly at her, before his eyes glowed and he bit her on the collarbone, muttering a soft, "mine" against her skin. Kushina, however, did not bite his neck. Instead, her wings came alive and wrapped around him. When they touched his back, however, they glowed softly and a large pair of golden feathered wings appeared tattooed onto his back. Naruto blinked and looked at Kushina, who smirked. "They're golden wings, my mate mark to you," she stated, knowing he couldn't see them. Naruto nodded and smiled. "Cool. Good night, Kaa-san," he said softly as he drifted to sleep, cuddled against her. Kushina smiled and cuddled close with her lover. "Good night, Naruto Sachi," she said, combining his name and title into one. Foreshadowing, 1 month, Tsunade's office. Tsunade looked up from her desk, surprised to see her guest. "What can I do for you?" she asked. The female in front of her blushed. "I need your help, Tsunade-sama," she said, causing Tsunade to turn serious. Naruto smiled as he awoke from his restful slumber and took in the form of his newest mate. She was snuggled close to him, with a large pleased smile on her face. His smile broadened as he realized he'd be pulling his first prank in months when Kushina finally awoke. Until then, he was content to run his hands through her hair and listen to her moan softly. Kushina awoke half an hour later and smiled, feeling the familiar soreness between her legs and the muscular hands roaming her scalp. "This is a good way to wake up Naruto-kun," she said before breaking from his hands and kissing him gently. Naruto chuckled as he pulled away from their short kiss. "I quite agree, Kaa-san, but I think we have a prank to pull, and everyone else is still asleep seeing as it's quite early," he commented, motioning to the clock which read 6:30 a.m. Kushina giggled at the title and blushed slightly, remembering their little game from the night before, something she'd definitely have to continue. "Alright then, how about I take a shower then head to breakfast and you make sure you come down after everyone else is down there," she suggested, not wanting to totally plan their prank, instead letting things flow as it was more fun and genuine that way. Naruto smiled. Sounds good, he replied before kissing her and then snuggling into the sheets for a quick nap even as Kushina headed for the bathroom. Namikaze Estates, 7:30 a.m., dining room. Naruto's girls, minus Yoko who was still asleep in Samui's bed, were all smiling and joking around the table, despite it being rather early in the morning. Kushina had finished making pancakes for everyone just as Naruto had stepped onto the ground floor, sending his newest mate a foxy grin. Their prank was underway. Naruto smiled at his girls. "Ohio Mina," he said loudly. "Good morning everyone." All of his girls just smiled back and yelled their own good mornings before focusing on their plates, or rather the pancakes on their plates. Everyone loved Kushina's cooking, so it was just natural for them to eat very quickly, otherwise some of the more aggressive women would steal their food. Kushina, however, was still cooking some more pancakes, specifically, a set for Yoko. "Naruto, make sure you eat every last bite, okay?" she asked without turning around, lest she give away the amused twinkle in her eye. Naruto rolled his eyes and gulped down the mouthful of pancakes in his mouth. Yeah, should I use sugar-free syrup and I can't believe it's not butter as well?" he asked sarcastically. The rest of the girls raised an eyebrow at the unusually sharp remark. Kushina huffed and turned around. "Don't you get sassy with me, boy. I can still bend you over my knee and give you a good whipping," she replied heatedly, even as she tried to sound as motherly as she could. Naruto gave her a saucy smirk. "Didn't know you were into that, Kaa-san," he said tauntingly. This caused several of the girls to narrow their eyes in curiosity and annoyance. Kushina growled at him. "After last night I thought we agreed I could take my rightful place," she replied, barely keeping the smirk off her face as she saw Anko and Hikari nearly go supernova. Naruto growled right back, but kept an eye on his two oldest mates. "Sure we did, but I didn't think you were gonna go all super controlling on me, Kaa-san," he said once again, causing many of the girls' eyes to twitch as they caught on to the act, sans Hikari and Anko. The rest of the girls felt Hikari and Anko's anger but kept silent, seeing as they were annoyed that they had bought into this farce at all. Still, it didn't help that Kushina and Naruto began to laugh long and hard, causing Anko and Hikari to blink in surprise. "Okami. That was beautiful, Kushina-chan," Naruto said as he wiped a tear from his eye. "I know, I can't believe you all fell for that," she said as she pulled Yoko's pancakes off the grill. Hikari and Anko glanced at one another before blushing profusely, even as the rest of the girls all looked quite annoyed and a bit ashamed that they were tricked so easily. Naruto chuckled once more. "Sorry, but it was just too good to pass up. I promise we won't do that again," he told his girls. Hikari glared at Naruto. "That was mean, Naruto-kun, but what's with you calling her Kaa-san?" she asked, genuinely curious. The rest of the girls leaned in eager to hear this story. Naruto sighed but smiled. I thought it was kinda kinky and we had a lot of fun with it last night," he said before noticing that Kushina had walked beside him and grabbed her waist. "Isn't that right, Kaa-san?" he asked. Kushina blushed and slapped his shoulder playfully. Now, incest isn't something to be aired, Sachi-kun, but yes, we had quite the adventure," she replied happily. Several of the girls sported nosebleeds, most notably Hana, Hikari, and Yujito, but most just had severe blushes. Fu smirked, however, through her blush. "So I'm guessing your Kaa-san rocked your world last night, Naruto-kun? I want details," she said leaning forward. Naruto chuckled even as Kushina blushed. "Well, let's just say that I'm pretty sure Kushina-chan wouldn't mind getting pregnant again," he said, causing Hana to fly back and hit the wall unconscious. Would I never guessed her for an incest fetish?" Naruto added, getting several chuckles from around the room. Suddenly, however, a young golden-haired girl came down the stairs, rubbing her eyes tiredly. She looked to be about 7 years old, and her one open eye was also a bright gold, even as the shirt that was obviously far too big for her covered her petite body from view. "Samui-chan, what's for breakfast?" she asked. Everyone in the room blinked before Samui stepped forward. "Yoko-chan, is that you?" she asked curiously. Yoko finished rubbing her eye and blinked owlishly at all the attention on her. Hi. Who are all these people, Samui-chan?" she asked nervously, fighting her urge to change into her dragon form and bolt straight for Samui's soft warm bed. Samui smiled softly, seeing the nervous fear in her eyes. "Well, you already know my fiancé and some of my fellow Naruto lovers. These are the rest of his future wives. Hikari-chan, Anko-chan, Hana-chan, Amaterasu-chan, Kiyomi-chan, and Yujito-chan." "Don't worry, they're my friends too," she said warmly, even as each woman nodded to the young girl in turn. Yoko nodded hesitantly before finding herself sitting on Naruto's lap and Kushina placing the pancakes she made before her. "Dig in, Yoko-chan, Kushina-chan made more than enough for everyone," Naruto said, smiling. Yoko craned her neck up and looked into Naruto's smiling face before her own smile light up the room, and she proceeded to demolish the pancakes. The rest of the girls chuckled and continued their breakfast, occasionally asking Yoko questions to get to know their newest friend. Time skip, 6 weeks, 2 weeks following foreshadowing strategy meeting. Shikaku stepped forward and looked over the assembled jounin, an important shinobi amongst the assembly. Most jounin in Naruto's group were currently in attendance, seeing as about 80% of their intelligence came from Naruto's recon and they had a bit more understanding of Orochimaru's twisted allies than anyone else in the room. He sighed and pointed to the large map that hung on the wall. Currently, Orochimaru and his allies are not moving at all. They have few bases outside of their own homes, and those few were small and easily dispatched, as if they didn't matter. However, thanks to the Namikaze clan, he said, nodding to Naruto and his girls, we have gotten bits and pieces of the summoning seals and have begun to put them together, he stated. Any idea what these small camps were being used for? Asuma asked curiously. Shikaku shook his head, not at the moment, but the only one that had any real resistance was the one in Nami no Kuni. However, that was successfully snuffed out by Clan Namikaze, he said. Said clan rolled their eyes because they realized they were so large that they would be called that for any future meetings. Asuma just nodded and stepped back next to Kurane. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Orochimaru isn't the type to just waste resources, even if they are cannon fodder. Do these small camps have some sort of pattern? He asked, trying to figure out his enemy's plans. Shikaku once again shook his head. There's no real pattern aside from the fact that they're all over the place. They could be looking for something, but scouts would be better for that rather than setting up small and easily destroyable camps, he replied. Naruto nodded and stepped back next to his girls as well. Tsunade nodded to her two shinobi, thanking them for asking rather intelligent questions. Any suggestions, Shikaku? She asked from her seat off to the side. Shikaku put his hands in front of him in a thinking pose, but, before he could answer, if they aren't attacking us, why don't we go on the offensive? Random cannon fodder number 8 asked. Shikaku shook his head for the third time that day. Troublesome. We can't do that as the Naga have Kiri thoroughly defended, seeing as they can swim in the water faster than just about any of our shinobi can run, and Oto has their own shinobi, plus Orochimaru's twisted abominations, in addition to a few Kiri ninja as well. No, attacking isn't an option unless we use hit and run tactics, he replied. The attending ninja fell silent, but Kushina soon stepped forward, not to get off topic, but has there been any word from IWA? She asked, causing many to suddenly snap their attention to Shikaku. Shikaku once again muttered his signature phrase, annoyed at having to speak this much. Yes, actually, they have pledged to not join either side so long as they are not attacked or threatened, he answered, causing a sigh of relief to be heard across the room. Naruto stepped forward again. In that case, I think hit and run tactics on Oto's borders would be our best bet right now. Never commit enough for them to bring a sizable force on our own shinobi, but always enough to do some damage, he said, adding his 2 cents. Shikaku looked around and saw many of the jounin nodding their heads in approval and looked towards Tsunade, who nodded as well. Very well, hit and run tactics it is. We will also continue to monitor our lands and the lands of our allies for any signs of the camps popping up again. Your assignments will be sorted out by the end of the week and handed out by Hokage-sama. Dismissed, he stated before the group disappeared. Tsunade smiled. It would seem that Naruto has already got their support, she said warmly. Shikaku sighed. He did piggyback on my suggestion, but you are right, he has their support, he stated before he disappeared as well to go cloud watching. Namikaze Estates, next morning. Naruto blinked his eyes clear of his grogginess and glanced over at his clock, which read 6:45 a.m. A little earlier than normal, but it was okay as he wanted to cook for his girls today. He glanced down and smiled warmly. Spread across the giant bed were all of his girls, several of them cuddled up with one another. Hikari, Anko, Hana, and Amaterasu were actually in a 4-way cuddle, with Hikari's and Amaterasu's tails covering them, despite the sheets. Yujito, Kiyomi, and Fu were actually snuggled together, while Kushina and Samui were currently on either side of him. He blinked again when he noticed a subtle movement down his right side, between him and Samui. He craned his neck, not moving his body lest he awake his sleeping beauties, and smiled seeing the young Yoko currently hugging his arm, with Samui's arms protectively wrapped around her, leaving her head nestled between Samui's mountainous bosom. The little dragon had fast become friends with everyone in the Namikaze estates, and she was more than welcome here. He gently removed his arms from both of their warm sheaths, his right gently stroking Yoko's hair. He felt her nuzzle into Samui's chest a little more. "Samui Kaa-san, Naruto Dio-san," she spoke softly in her dream. Naruto froze, his eyes wide. Did she just call me Dio-san, he asked himself, before looking more closely at Yoko. She sported a soft, serene smile, one Naruto recognized as the smile a child gets from being loved by their parents. He frowned softly and thought back, she never mentioned her parents, so could she be an orphan, he asked himself. He suddenly shook his head and quietly made a cage bunshin before switching with it. He headed downstairs after getting dressed. I'd best speak with her about this. Not that I'm made that she sees me that way, but I'd rather her be honest with us than hide from us, he thought, before realizing that Samui would need to know of this as well. However, he was broken from his thoughts as Yoko came down the stairs, surprisingly being the second one up. "Naruto-kun, what's for breakfast?" she asked in a sleepy voice. Naruto turned and frowned at her. "Breakfast can wait, Yoko-chan, I think we need to talk," he said, causing Yoko to become fully awake. "Tea talk? About what?" I haven't done anything bad, have I?" she asked quickly, her nervous fear coming back. Naruto frowned, made a cage bunshin to continue breakfast, and walked over to her, taking her small hands in his own. "Calm down, Yoko-chan, you aren't in trouble. We just need to talk about where you see yourself in this family," he said, causing Yoko to go from nervous to relaxed and back to nervous in a split second. What do you mean? I'm your friend, aren't I?" she asked, trying to smile, but her nervousness still shining through. Naruto held her hands tightly, not letting go. "Of course you are, but do friends keep secrets from one another? Like what you dream about?" he asked gently. Yoko tried to pull away, but Naruto's hands held her and he pulled the small child to his chest, stroking her hair. "It's okay to dream happy dreams, Yoko-chan, but you shouldn't keep them to yourself. Why don't you tell me about your parents?" he suggested softly, feeling her stiffen in her arms. Yoko began to cry and she continued to do so for several minutes before calming down. Naruto didn't quite know what to expect when Yoko began to talk, but the story she told him made his already warm heart reach out for the young dragon. I am an orphan. My mom died in childbirth and my dad, no one knows. He is dead according to Ryujin-sama, but that's all I know. My mom was one of the last gold dragons left, and now I'm the last. Ryujin-sama helped to nurture me when I was a baby, but he's been busy lately and hasn't had time to visit me," she said, growing quiet. Naruto smiled softly at Yoko, understanding quite well where she was coming from. "You know my story, don't you?" he asked her, softly letting her go. Yoko nodded, her eyes red from the tears. "Good, then you know that I understand where you're coming from. But could you please tell me about your dream this morning?" he asked gently. He noticed Yoko stiffen once again, before dropping her head, her bangs covering her face. He could still make out the slightest of pink on her face though. We were at the park," she started softly. "I was running around and playing with the other dragons when you and Samui-chan showed up," she continued. Naruto reached out and took her hand in his own, lending his silent support. Why you said, let's go home. Mizume-chan before you picked me up and put me on your walk home, where Samui-chan gave me a bath and we all ate dinner before climbing into bed. Samui-chan read me a bedtime story while we all cuddled and I told you." She hesitated again, but Naruto squeezed her hand comfortingly. "I said, good night, Samui Kaa-san, Naruto Dio-san, before I began to wake up," she said, still looking away from him. Naruto's eyes were soft as he pulled Yoko into his chest again, sitting with her in his lap. Yoko was surprised by this, as she expected Samui and Naruto to thoroughly reject her if she ever voiced this desire of hers. "Well, that sounds like a wonderful dream, Yoko-chan. But why did you keep this to yourself?" "'Cause I'm sure this wasn't a one-time thing," Naruto commented, knowing he had often awoke to dreaming of his own parents when he was small. Yoko blushed and snuggled into Naruto's chest a little more. I was afraid you and Samui-chan would tell me that I'm not your friend any longer. I just want to be part of your family, Naruto-kun," she said softly, with a lot of sadness in her voice. Naruto was silent for a minute before smirking devilishly. "Yoko-chan, I have a deal for you," he stated. Yoko blinked as she suddenly found herself seated on the table and staring Naruto in the eyes. "If you ask Samui-chan to be your Kaa-san, then I'll be your Ryo-san no matter what her answer is, okay?" he offered, already knowing Samui wouldn't say no. Yoko's eyes went as wide as the moon. "Why, you really mean that, Naruto-kun?" she asked excitedly. Naruto nodded, smiling. "I promise, believe it," he said, making a slight joke on his old catchphrase. Yoko nearly tackled Naruto as she jumped into his arms yelling in happiness. This was almost a dream come true. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, this had the side effect of waking the rest of Clan Namikaze from their sleep. Anko came trudging down the stairs. "What's with all the racket so early in the morning?" she whined even as she sat down. The rest of the girls soon followed, with Yoko being swiped up by Samui and seated on her lap before she even realized it. Naruto chuckled and noticed that his cage bunshin was done cooking and had it bring the food over to the table. "Oh, nothing, just a little deal between me and Yoko-chan," he stated nonchalantly, before giving Yoko a knowing look. Yoko, however, was feeling far more confident than when she had talked to Naruto, and decided she didn't want to wait any longer. Samui looked down at her friend curiously. "What deal would that be, Yoko-chan?" she asked, with the rest of the girls leaning in. Yoko smiled brightly at Samui. "Would you be my Kaa-san, Samui-chan?" she asked, causing 9 jaws to drop simultaneously around the table. Even Naruto hadn't expected her to just up and ask right away. Samui blinked in surprise and sputtered for a second before picking up Yoko and putting her on the table so she could look at her directly. "Why would you ask me something like that, Yoko-chan?" she replied. Yoko suddenly got a pained look on her face and looked away. "I never knew my parents, and you and Naruto Ryo-san are the closest I've ever had. Even if you say no, I'll still be your friend, Samui-chan, but I just couldn't keep hiding my dreams any longer," she said sadly. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "And me catching you had nothing to do with it?" he asked with a teasing tone. Yoko just blushed a deep red, knowing she'd been caught. Samui was silent for several more minutes before looking at Naruto. "I'm guessing you agreed to be her Ryo-san if I said yes?" she asked. Naruto shook his head. "As long as she asked, I said I'd assume that role. I know what it's like to grow up without a family, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone if I can help it," he replied. Samui smiled softly and hugged Yoko. "I'll be your Kaa-san if that's what you really want, Yoko-chan," she answered warmly. Yoko's eyes brimmed with tears and she began to cry into Samui's generous bosom, not that the new mother was really complaining. Naruto stood up and hugged the two females softly, causing Yoko to latch onto him as well. All of Naruto's girls smiled brightly, but none more so than Kiyomi. Several minutes later, breakfast was well underway and Yoko was happier than ever, listening to everything her new parents told her to do. However, Yoko wondered about something. When most of the girls had finished their breakfast, Yoko spoke up. "Kaa-san," she asked, looking up at Samui, who quickly nodded at her adopted daughter. "Since Naruto is my Ryo-san, what does that make the rest of his lovers to me?" she asked. Samui and Naruto both blinked, not really sure how to answer that. Until Fu bounded up and nearly crushed the poor dragon in between her own massive breasts. "Just call me Fu Kaa-san too," she said happily, grabbing the dragon and spinning her around. The rest of the girls blinked before looking at one another and shrugging, not really sure what they wanted to do. Samui soon bonked Fu on the head and grabbed her Musume, allowing the young girl to catch her breath and stop her head from spinning before looking back up at her Kaa-san. "Does that mean I have 9 Kaa-sans?" she asked innocently. Naruto blinked again before shivering in fear as he saw all of his girls immediately agree with the cute little girl. Somehow, he figured that maybe having 9 moms wouldn't be a good thing. He took a closer look at Yoko, and smiled. Then again, Yoko didn't seem to mind if the giant smile on her face was anything to go by. The family began to head upstairs to their own rooms to get ready for the day when Kiyomi stepped up to Naruto and whispered in his ear, "I need to speak with you, in private," she said looking at the other girls who were still preoccupied by Yoko. He nodded and pointed upstairs. Kiyomi nodded back and quickly went back to his room. Naruto's room, 8 a.m. Kiyomi paced nervously as she waited for Naruto. She was pretty sure he wouldn't be mad, but she didn't really know how he'd react to the news she had for him. All she knew was that she couldn't keep news like this from him any longer. It wasn't the right thing to do, and he had a right to know. Naruto soon joined her and motioned to the bed, where they both sat down. "What's up, Kiyomi-chan?" he asked curiously. He was rather worried about her seeing as she never acted nervous, always flirty, or serious. Kiyomi took a deep breath, calming herself. "Naruto, I want you to promise me you won't freak out with what I'm about to tell you," she replied seriously. Naruto blinked in surprise but nodded. "All right, I promise," he said. Kiyomi sighed in relief and thought for a second before figuring out what she wanted to say. "Why, you remember what me and Yujito-chan told you when we finished our mating?" she asked. Naruto thought for a second before blushing slightly. "You said you wanted me to, basically make you mother's right," he asked. Kiyomi blushed slightly but nodded. "Yes. Well, it seems that you made my wish come true," she said, causing Naruto to freeze for the second time that day. Kiyomi kept a nervous eye on him, but it all seemed for naught as a slow smile spread across his face. "You're pregnant with my kid," he said, causing Kiyomi's blush to intensify and for Naruto to suddenly push her down on the bed and make out furiously with her. Kiyomi moaned lovingly into Naruto's mouth before Naruto broke away and suddenly put his ear to her stomach, rubbing it like it was the Holy Grail. "Our child," he said softly. Kiyomi smiled brightly and put her hand over Naruto's. "Yes, our child," she said lovingly. Suddenly Naruto popped up. "I'm gonna be a father." "Wahoo!" he yelled before disappearing in a bright flash of yellow. Kiyomi blushed as she heard, in addition to the entire village, as Naruto dashed around the village at light speed yelling his joy to the world. Kiyomi giggled however when Naruto suddenly reappeared before her and started rubbing her stomach again, even as the rest of his girls came rushing into the room. Naruto shot them a million-watt smile, never moving his head. "Hey girls. I'm gonna be a dad," he said happily. Any jealousy that may have come from not being Naruto's first child-bearer immediately evaporated when they saw how ecstatic Naruto was. Amaterasu smiled warmly as she walked up to Kiyomi. "Congratulations, Kiyomi-chan, Naruto-kun," she said, followed soon by the rest of the girls, who each took turns in rubbing Kiyomi's belly, much to her embarrassment. Yoko, however, had another thing to say. She looked to Samui. "Kaa-san, does this mean I'm going to have an A-san or an I-san?" she asked, sounding excited as she had just been accepted into their family and it was already growing. Naruto smiled and grabbed the young girl, putting her hand on Kiyomi's belly as well. "Yes, and if you're lucky, maybe two," he said happily. Kiyomi smiled warmly at the scene, happy that nothing bad had come of her news, despite her nervous fears. However, no one noticed the foreboding glance that Fu gave Naruto. Time skip, Friday of that week, 2 days later. Naruto sighed as he finished packing for his assignment. Naruto, Amaterasu, Kushina, Samui, and Hana were all to be deployed to the hit and run forward command, while the rest of Naruto's girls would be a sort of home defense, not to mention doting on Kiyomi. Naruto was grateful that Tsunade had enough foresight to leave half of his lovers at home in case Kiyomi was attacked. Not that he was playing favorites, but Kiyomi was carrying his child, and all the girls had seemingly accepted that rather readily, much to Naruto's relief as he certainly didn't want another Kushina incident on his hands. He looked around the room and shook his head. Several memories were passing through his eyes and he barely noticed his wife walking into the room, wearing a rather simple orange, of all things, kimono. Fu smiled victoriously seeing Naruto where she thought he would be. It was about mid-afternoon, and the clan had had a late lunch after their briefings with Tsunade, so Fu was sure the two of them would have plenty of time for what she wanted to do, not to mention she had already set up a small dinner for where they were going as well, just in case they spent more time than she anticipated. Naruto smiled at his legal wife. "Hello Fu-chan, how can I help you?" he asked, before finding himself being dragged out of the house. "You and me have something to discuss, Naruto-kun, and you will be silent until we reach our destination or I'll have tell the rest of the girls that you have decided that sex is off limits until Orochimaru is dead," she said smirking evilly as they exited the house, after having walked past many of Naruto's lovers, most of whom gave them a confused glance then a knowing smirk. Naruto gulped and quickly began walking beside Fu. "Whatever you say Fuheim," he replied nervously. Fu just smirked and picked up her pace. Several minutes later Naruto and Fu walked into the clearing where they had gotten married. The sakura trees were still blooming and the entire field was covered in their petals, sans the small wooden structure that extended out over the water. Naruto noticed that there were some pillows and a large plush blanket laid out on the wooden floor, so he was curious as to what she wanted, even as he was sure he was gonna have a good time tonight. Fu quickly made her way over to the blanket, with Naruto soon behind, and turned around to face her husband. "Sit," she ordered. Naruto blinked but complied, not really sure what to make of her being so forceful, as she had always been so soft and shy before, sans their cuddle sessions. You know, most women would kill their husbands for finding out that another woman was having their baby before them, she stated as she pulled the orange clip out of her hair, letting it fall down to shoulder length. Naruto chuckled nervously, yeah, but you're not most women, he replied, hoping this wasn't going to turn into a beating. Fu smirked sexily, I'm glad you see that. While I won't kill you for it, she said before pausing and discreetly loosening her obi which held her kimono up, I am rather annoyed at the fact that Kiyomi is pregnant and I haven't even had my honeymoon yet, she said before shedding her kimono completely, standing before Naruto in all her glory. So you are going to rectify that tonight, and if you think you are going anywhere, then you are sadly mistaken, she said darkly even as she knelt before him and grabbed his crotch. This is mine tonight and I'm going to wear you out, she said sexily. Lemon start. Please skip to next bold line if underage. Naruto gulped before he found himself underneath a very well-endowed Fu who was currently lip-locking passionately with him. He quickly recovered however and eagerly kissed his wife back, intent on giving her the honeymoon she deserved. They continued to kiss for nearly a minute, with Fu tugging on Naruto's pants the entire time, before breaking apart breathlessly and sitting up. Fu's eyes gazed over his clothed form. Clothes off now, she said simply, causing Naruto to smirk and begin to undress, even as he took in his wife's body. Her green hair was now shoulder length, a tip she had gotten from Naruto's other lovers saying he liked long hair, which caused her orange eyes to stand out. Her body was gorgeous, but Naruto noticed that Fu was trying to hide her very generous bosom from his view. Her legs were long, and he knew her ass would be nice and firm, while being round enough to give him a boner every time she waggled it at him. Why are you holding your breasts like that, Fu-chan? He asked softly. Fu blushed, only having one insecurity when it came to today, and she decided to get it out of the way quickly. She gazed at him, giving her a soft loving look, before gently grabbing her breasts and presenting her lover with the enormous globes. Do you like them? She asked softly. Naruto blinked, confused. They only add to. He never got to finish as Fu interrupted him, loudly. I asked do you like them? She yelled, her eyes closed. They sat silent for a minute before Fu turned her head to the side, still holding her breasts. I want to know if you find them attractive, she started softly. I always had small breasts, almost non-existent, and when Shishibai-kun gave me these huge knockers I wasn't really happy, until you nearly passed out with a nosebleed, she said, causing Naruto to blush, remembering that. She turned her head back to him, staring him in the eyes. I know most men like big breasts, but I just want to know if my lover thinks I'm sexy with these things, or if they just make me look like a big cow, she added, causing him to frown and open his mouth, only to be beaten to the punch. I don't want to hear about your feelings for me, she said, smiling softly at him. I know you love me, and you. Just. She bit her lip and blushed again. Tell me if you like them or not, because I already asked Shishibai-kun to remove them if you don't, she said. Naruto blinked again before shaking his head, chuckling softly. Fu went to open her mouth but all that came out was a loud moan. Naruto's hands were deftly massaging the massive globes of flesh on her chest. Of course I find them attractive. You were sexy before you had them, but adding them just makes you any man's walking wet dream, mine included, he said softly, before looking her in the eye. Don't ever be self-conscious about your chest again, it was a nice gift from Shishibai-sama and it only made you more beautiful than before, he said before he suddenly found himself being crushed by said large globes. Fu was kissing Naruto passionately, intent on showing how happy she was that Naruto liked her additions. She had never said anything, but they had made her a bit self-conscious as she had always been ignored before, but her gifts had made her get more cat calls and whistles in one day than the entirety of her life before. She knew that Naruto had found her pretty even before her gifts and was willing to go back to that if Naruto didn't care for them, but, since he liked them, she decided that there was one thing she would definitely have to try. They broke apart and Fu smiled lustfully at her man. I know of a way to make you absolutely love them, she said huskily, surprising Naruto. Said man blinked before finding his wife running kisses down his body to his, now erect, penis. Fu took a few seconds to admire the large pleasure stick before she shot Naruto yet another lustful smile. Itadakimasu, she exclaimed softly before gently taking the cock into her mouth and sucking on it, whilst her left hand stroked what she couldn't fit inside her mouth. Naruto groaned softly and put his hands on Fu's head, enjoying the blowjob he was receiving. Fu was no expert, but her tongue was never idle and Naruto could honestly say it was the best blowjob he had ever received. Her mouth was warm and the suction was just plain erotic as she could hear her sucking on his stick like a lollipop. Fu, for her part, was rather enjoying her lover's taste. It was somewhat salty, but not bad. She had silently made a clone, which had grabbed the nearby lubricant she had bought specifically for this encounter, and was lavishing it in between her breasts as she sucked on Naruto. She heard her clone pop and looked up to Naruto, whose eyes were closed in pleasure, before mentally smirking and letting his cock fall out of her mouth with a loud pop. Naruto groaned in displeasure and opened his eyes to look down at his lover only for his breath to hitch in his throat. Fu was currently positioning her massive mammary glands around his cock and she was giving him one hell of a lustful stare. "I hope you like this, I've always wondered what it'd be like to pleasure you like this and I'm going to do my best," she said smirking before mashing her breasts together over his cock and rubbing them up and down. Naruto's head went back and his hands fisted the sheet below them as he tried to keep himself from thrusting wildly. Fu smirked as she watched Naruto thoroughly enjoy his tit fuck. She had started out with a simple up and down motion with her breasts, which were surprisingly sensitive as she could already feel her juices flowing from her nether lips, before adding and licking his crown every time it appeared from its fleshy cock sleeve. Naruto moaned loudly as Fu continued to lavish her attention on his cock. His other lovers had never really been ones for foreplay, and neither was he, but Fu's obvious preparation and the thick scent of her arousal was causing him to believe that she was enjoying this nearly as much as he was. He felt his end nearing, but tried to hold out a little longer. Fu smirked as she started to push her left breast up while her right breast went down, alternating their direction and causing Naruto's moan to heighten a notch. She could see that he was totally in her clutches, and it made her totally hot. She'd always been the punching bag for her village and seeing Naruto so easily, and willingly, give himself to her was demi-erotic. She gave his cock head a quick suck, causing him to suck in his breath, before smiling at him. "It's so damn sexy to see you all twisted in pleasure, Naruto-kun," she started softly, before smirking devilishly, "but quit fighting it. I want to move on and we can't do that if you keep holding out, honey," she said huskily before trapping his crown between her lips and sucking hard. She wasn't disappointed. Naruto practically roared as he released himself into Fu's willing mouth, his first shot easily filling half her mouth and causing her to quickly gulp down the warm milky seed. He felt Fu press her breasts hard against his shaft, even as her mouth and tongue never stopped seeking his seed, and he was more than happy to comply. It took him nearly a minute before his body calmed down and he began to take deep gulps of breath, even as he heard Fu let his cock go with a slight pop. Fu smirked as she looked down at her slightly tired lover. She had enjoyed tit-fucking him, so much so she was very ready for the next stage of their love-making, and she really didn't want to wait too long. So she grabbed a nearby towel and whipped the lubricant from her breasts, in case he wanted to suckle them later, before cuddling up next to her husband and giving him a soft kiss on the cheek. "I hope that isn't all you have, honey. We're just getting started," Fu said, smirking. Naruto's eyes opened fully and he felt himself getting hard again, so he smirked back and twisted over his wife, causing her to eep loudly before pinning her to the ground. "I like the sound of that," he replied lustfully. Fu smirked and moaned softly as she felt him begin to rub his nearly erect cock against her sensitive folds. "Then what are you waiting for, Koi?" she asked. Naruto just kissed her passionately and pressed himself into her nether lips, letting her scream rip into his mouth as he stretched her pussy to accommodate his girth. He felt slightly bad but shook those thoughts away and pushed himself into her until he was fully sheathed, his cock head resting very close to her cervix, even as he wrapped his arms lovingly around her. Fu screamed loudly into Naruto's mouth, her pussy having never been penetrated by anything but her own fingers, but wasn't mad at him in the slightest. She knew he probably felt bad, but once he was sheathed and he stopped moving, she was able to relax herself some more and help the pain ebb away. They stayed connected for nearly 5 minutes before Fu smiled at Naruto and shifted her hips. "Sorry, I just enjoy you being in me, so I waited a little longer than normal," she said before kissing him softly, giving him the go-ahead to start their love-making in full. Naruto smiled at his lover even as he started to saw in and out of her tight sheath. She was as unique as all of his other lovers and he was beginning to think that it wasn't just a coincidence. Her pussy was vibrating. Yes, that's right, vibrating. It was a very strange but pleasurable sensation as every time Naruto thrust back into his lover the vibrations seemed to increase, but never so much to make it uncomfortable. Still, Fu was very tight and wet, and he was definitely enjoying the way her boobs bounced on her chest as he fucked her stupid. Fu moaned loudly as Naruto hit her sweet spot. She could feel her breasts bouncing wildly on her chest, and noticed his gaze wandering from her eyes to her breasts, which was erratic as he couldn't seem to decide which one he liked more. Still, Naruto's well-endowed cock was giving her pleasure she had never felt before. She could feel her nether lips pulsing around his erection and thoroughly enjoyed the sensation, even as she felt her own end fast approaching. Naruto groaned when he slammed into Fu's cervix before hearing Fu scream in pleasure and her pussy clench on his cock while pulsating insanely fast. There was no way he could hold out on the assault and let loose his own howl of pleasure before painting Fu's womb white with his seed. The interesting thing was that Fu's pussy never stopped pulsing around his cock, effectively causing him to emit a few extra shots into her willing hole. Naruto looked into Fu's eyes as they came down off their orgasms and sighed blissfully. She was smiling. Fu screamed and her vision exploded into white lights as Naruto hit her cervix and caused her world, and her orgasm, to come crashing down. She felt her hips rise to keep him as deep as possible inside her body, even as her pussy vibrated wildly on his cock, receiving the white cream she had worked so hard to achieve. She moaned softly as Naruto's last few shots invaded her womb and smiled as her lover bent down and kissed her softly. They broke apart, both still smiling. "That was wonderful, Naruto-kun," she said. Naruto's smile widened. "Good, because there's plenty more where that came from," he said cockily. Fu smirked before a playful glint appeared in her eyes and she adopted a hurt expression as Naruto extricated himself from her. "Why didn't you mark me?" she asked with a sad tone. Naruto frowned, thinking he had actually hurt her. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said quickly before leaning forward and biting her collarbone, unknowingly giving Fu a mini-orgasm from the thrill it sent through her system. Fu gasped in pleasure before returning the favor, biting him over Yugito's and Kiyomi's marks, adding her own bright orange beetle to their marks. Naruto smiled as they broke apart. "Better?" he asked, his own erection back to full mast. Fu looked down before smirking at him sexily. "A little, but there's something else that would make this perfect," she replied, getting a raised eyebrow from her husband. Fu giggled before quickly pushing Naruto off of her and getting on her hands and knees, shaking her ass at him. "I know you like this position and I really want to give it a try," she said huskily, while staring at him over her shoulder. Naruto blinked in surprise before smirking at her lustfully. "Oh, we can do that," he said before lining himself up and thrusting right into her tight wet snatch, causing both of them to moan loudly in appreciation before Naruto grabbed her hips and they began to fuck in earnest. Fu was panting like a dog as Naruto continued to ream her pussy from behind, not that she was complaining. She had her eyes closed and was focused solely on the feeling of Naruto's cock piercing her innermost sanctum again and again, even as she was hoping he'd get her pregnant like he did with Kiyomi. Naruto had only fucked her twice, but she was already hooked on the way her body, her pussy specifically, reacted to having him inside her, and she knew she'd milk him dry as often as she could. Naruto grunted as he thrust himself deep inside his lover once again. Naruto could honestly say he loved this view as much as he loved watching her breasts. Her ass bunched against his hips and her back arching as he impaled her on his stick again and again. It was demi-erotic. He felt Fu's pussy vibrating faster and faster, even as his own orgasm was swiftly approaching, and decided to put them both of the top. He leaned forward and grabbed her tits from behind, massaging and twisting the massive globes of flesh as he hit her G-spot. Fu screamed her orgasm to the world and thrust her hips back against Naruto's own. The added stimulation to her breasts and G-spot was too much to bear and she was hardly aware of Naruto's own howl before his seed splashed into her waiting womb, bringing a blissful smile to her face. She loved the way his cock pulsed with each shot, and the way her womb just seemed to open for his seed, never wasting a drop. She felt her orgasm, and Naruto's, taper off so she glanced over her shoulder before smiling again and rolling to the side, with Naruto still inside her. Naruto howled loudly as Fu's pussy clenched around his cock before he spewed his seed right into her sacred honeypot. He could feel Fu's orgasm peak and decline from the way her muscles pulsated around his cock. He loved the way he could feel her orgasm and smiled softly as he felt it taper off. He was dimly aware of Fu looking at him over her shoulder before they both rolled onto their sides, cuddling in post-orgasmic bliss. They panted for a few minutes, catching their breath even as Naruto pulled himself from Fu's entrance. Fu smiled over her shoulder and Naruto leaned forward to catch her mouth as a gentle kiss. Soon enough, though, they broke apart. I think I just found my new favorite activity. Fu said half-jokingly. Naruto chuckled, it is a good workout, and quite fun, he replied smiling before finding himself sitting up with Fu in his lap, their sexes once again connecting them. Then let's wear ourselves out, shall we? Fu said with a saucy smirk before she began to bounce on Naruto's cock. Naruto smirked as he began to wear out his wife. The two lovers continued for several hours, and reached nearly 6 more climaxes before they collapsed into one another's arms, and wrapped themselves in the blanket, falling asleep as Naruto whispered a soft, "mine" into Fu's ear, causing a blissful smile to plaster itself across her face. Lemon end. It's okay to look, kitties. Samui waited till it was well past dark before quietly slipping out of bed and heading for Naruto's chakra signature. She smiled softly at the way the two lovers were intertwined before gently touching them and shunshining them to Naruto's bed. She stealthily made her way out of the room and took one last longing glance at the sleeping pair before heading off to bed herself, letting herself dream of when she would claim Naruto as all of his other mates had. Naruto awoke with a content smile and turned to look at his newest mate. Fu was snuggled firmly into his side and was gripping his arm fiercely. He chuckled softly and extracted himself carefully so he could prepare for the mission. Said actions, despite Naruto's care, caused him to ponder on Orochimaru's motives, or rather the lack thereof. Naruto couldn't make heads or tails of why Orochimaru would hide all of his forces. He initiated this war and yet he was being the defensive party of the conflict. They knew he was looking for something, but what could it be? He was broken from his thoughts when he felt a presence at his door. Naruto tensed slightly, happy that he had just finished his preparations when the door opened slowly. Hikari poked her head in, fox ears twitching as she looked for her mate. Naruto smiled seeing his first mate and quietly made his way to the door. Hikari's eyes brightened when they connected with Naruto's and she quickly motioned for him to follow her into the hallway. Naruto nodded and swiftly followed. Hikari snatched his hand up and laced her fingers together with his when he caught up to her. They walked in silence almost all the way downstairs before Hikari pushed Naruto up against the wall and began to heavily make out with him. They broke apart several minutes later, both gasping for air. Not that I mind. Naruto trailed as he took another deep breath, but what was that for, he asked. Hikari blushed slightly, she hadn't really planned to do that but it was a good way to start what she wanted to talk about. I'm worried about you. She admitted, looking at him with concern shining in her eyes, I feel something big is gonna happen soon and I wanted to kiss you so there. She stated. There seemed something different about the way she changed her words in mid-sentence but her resulting smile when he grabbed her and kissed her again had Naruto dismissing it. Unless, you don't want me to kiss you. She teased as her chest heaved from his kiss. Naruto grinned at her, of course not Hikari-chan, I still love any excuse to hold you close to me. He said as he grabbed her around the waist, pressing her to his body. Hikari smiled lovingly at him and snuggled into his chest, good. Because kissing leads to the fun stuff and I couldn't handle it if we didn't do that anymore. She said with a slightly humorous undertone. Naruto's sweat dropped, you know, sometimes I wonder if I married a whole bunch of minxes. He said as he put a hand to his chin in thought. But, that's not necessarily a bad thing. He said as a smile stretched across his lips. Both Hikari and Naruto heard a whole bunch of sneezes and silence reigned for a few seconds before they both burst out laughing. They quieted down soon after and reached the kitchen, where they set about making breakfast. So, what were you worried about, Hikari-chan? Naruto asked as they moved about the kitchen pulling out pans and different ingredients to make their loved ones a wonderful meal. Hikari sighed deeply, honestly, she asked him with a raised eyebrow. At Naruto's nod she continued, I keep remembering our fight with the past Orochi. It was a long and dangerous fight. She said, stopping to wrap her arms around her chest and hug herself. Orochi was very powerful, and extremely sneaky. I almost died several times, but Ami-chan was able to save me. I worry that you could fall victim to his tricks, Naruto-kun. She said sadly as a tear hovered at the edge of her eye. Naruto frowned as he put the spices he was working with down and quickly closed the distance between himself and his mate. He wiped away the tear as he stared at her lovingly, grasping her chin so she would look at him. He wrapped her in a fierce and loving hug. I understand, and it's okay to be frightened. To be honest, I'm a little scared too. He admitted, he disliked that Hikari stiffened in his arms. I mean, I'm supposed to fight a fallen god. One you and Ami-chan had trouble with. He added. He could feel Hikari's frown and the squirming she was doing in his arms, but, he said, causing Hikari to stop moving, I never got anywhere by giving in to my fears. I will win because, at the end of the day, I have you, Amaterasu, Anko, Yujito, Kiyomi, Hana, Fu, Kushina, and Samui to come home to. He said warmly. Hikari smiled brightly and reached up so she could kiss him. They heard some perverted giggling and broke apart after a brief kiss to find an amused Amaterasu and a giggling Anko. That was a very good answer, Naruto-kun, but perhaps you should focus on the food. Amaterasu suggested with a smirk. Naruto and Hikari separated, Hikari sending a glare to the girls for their interference, and checked their food, which was not burned. Amaterasu and Anko, after seeing Hikari's frustration with them, quietly joined their friend and lover for several minutes, until Amaterasu spoke up. She's right, you know. She said to Naruto. Naruto frowned but kept working. I know, but it's not like I can just run and leave him to someone else, now can I? He replied rhetorically. Amaterasu shook her head. I know you can't, but you should still be wary of him. He is very cunning and I have no doubt that he has only gotten even more slippery than before, especially now that he is mortal. She answered, thinking on the dozens of tricks he had used during their battle centuries ago. Anko frowned. I can attest to that. I know he was researching immortality and has more than a few techniques that can negate an attack or just regenerate his body. More than that, his tactics were always underhanded and he simply got sneakier and sneakier anytime he gained more power. She added her own feelings apparent by the disgust in her voice. She knew he acted more like a snake and a coward than any other man she'd ever met. Naruto nodded, listening intently even as he continued to cook. Anything else you could tell me about him? He asked curiously. He hoped they could give him some good tips so he could either end the fight quickly or keep his ass out of Urukai's line of fire. Hikari paused for a moment before adding her own advice. He is very fond of playing with his enemies, either mentally or physically, and will probably never engage you head-on until he is sure of victory. He is as dirty and underhanded as they come, so he won't hesitate to strike at any of your weak points. She replied, getting affirmative nods from her fellow Naruto lovers. By this time, the family could hear the rest of their loved ones waking up and Naruto nodded again to Hikari. Thanks Hikari-chan, I'll be sure to keep that in mind, but let's get away from the subject. No need to worry the others. He said, knowing the rest of his fiancés would worry far too much if they heard this conversation. The girls all nodded before Anko and Amaterasu set the table while Naruto and Hikari finished cooking. It wasn't long before they heard the loud, relatively, pitter-patter of small feet and Yoko came running into the kitchen just as Naruto set the last of the food onto the table. Tio-yu-san, she yelled happily as she launched herself towards him, with little regard to the fact that, had she been a few seconds earlier, she may have ruined the breakfast. Naruto chuckled as he quickly snatched his adoptive daughter up before spinning in place with her, causing her to laugh in joy. He grinned mischievously when he suddenly set her down in the chair nearest him, enjoying the way she pouted at being set down so quickly. Good morning Mizume, did you sleep well? He asked warmly. There was a moment of silence where Yoko obviously debated whether or not to answer him before she broke into happy giggles. Of course. Kaa-san is a wonderful pillow, she replied loudly. Samui, who had just walked into the room, blushed brightly when the other occupants of the room giggled at her flushed expression. Naruto smiled at Samui, letting her know he was amused at his adoptive daughter's antics but would never make fun of her blushing. Good to hear Mizume. He told her. Samui sat down next to her already seated Mizume and Yoko wasted no time in beginning to whisper to her Kaa-san as Naruto moved away and towards his own seat. The rest of Naruto's family appeared, from seemingly nowhere, and each took their seats. The sounds of happy family life rang throughout the morning as the family began their day. The family had finished breakfast and was about to head upstairs when a knock was heard at the door. Naruto furrowed his brow in confusion, wondering who would be at the house this early, and answered the door. Yojeo, in her umbu attire, stood sharply at attention on the other side. Hokage-sama has requested your and your fiancé's presence. Yojeo said. Naruto blinked. Okay. Roger that, please tell Hokage-sama we will be right there, he replied with surprise in his tone. Yojeo nodded in response, and disappeared in a swirl of leaves just as Naruto shut the door. Naruto returned to the kitchen, where his family had taken to clearing the table and cleaning the dishes. Everyone, listen up. He said, gaining their attention. Tsunade Baa-chan has called us up for, probably, some last-minute changes in orders. Let's hurry up and get there. He informed them, to which they all responded with a hi, as they set to work. Hokage's office 20 minutes later. Tsunade sat behind her desk with her fingers interlaced, awaiting Naruto and his family. Shizune and Jiraiya flanked her as they contemplated her last-minute changes. The Namikaze clan arrived only 20 minutes after they received their summons, and they swiftly grew serious in front of their commander. Tsunade nodded to them in acknowledgement of their arrival before motioning for Jiraiya and Shizune to join the group, not standing in front of her. Once they had complied, "I'm glad to see you responded so quickly. I have some changes to make. Kiyomi is still staying, of course, as is Yujito and Kushina, but Fu will also be remaining behind to create or improve on her taijutsu style." Tsunade began, getting a slightly annoyed look from Fu and Kushina. Tsunade nodded at them, glad there was no argument, and moved on. Her eyes snapped to Naruto. "Naruto, you and the rest of your clan will be with the assault party. We have gotten reports of a group of strong individuals calling themselves the Sound Four that have been left in charge of Oto territory whilst Orochimaru is away. Your group's objective is to remove them from the equation, by any means necessary," she said. Naruto grimaced at her tone of voice, but nodded, understanding her point of view. Tsunade nodded to him again, happy he hadn't argued a point she herself had trouble accepting. "Hana, you have progressed marvelously under my instruction, and so I am placing you as this group's personal medic," she ordered to a beaming Hana. Shizune and Naruto's group all smiled brightly at their friend/lover. Tsunade cracked a smirk as well, but she soon returned to her serious demeanor and focused on Shizune. "Shizune, you have done right by me ever since we met, and you have learned everything you can from me. I am placing you in command of the medics in the assault group as well as second in command under Kakashi," she said, shocking, mostly, Shizune. Shizune blinked furiously, not believing her ears. Shishao, what?" she asked loudly. Tsunade closed her eyes and looked older than Shizune had ever really noticed. "You heard me, Shizune. You are an amazing medic, one I am proud to have trained and call my prodigy. You are highly responsible, and I can think of no one better to serve in this role," Tsunade replied calmly. Shizune blinked away tears of pride and smiled brightly. "Thank you, Shishao. I won't let you down. I'll go prepare immediately," she said before disappearing in a shunshin. Jiraiya chuckled. "You really swallowed your pride there, Haim," he said with a smirk. Tsunade glared at him. "Shut up, you old lech. I have order for you as well," she said, causing them both to become serious once again. "You are to find Orochimaru and any of his generals. We need this information to end this war. In addition, you will be in a home defense position anytime you are in Konoha," she said, gaining a nod from Jiraiya before he left. Tsunade returned her attention, once again, to the Namikaze clan before drawing herself up. "You have your orders," she said seriously before her voice softened. "Be careful, all of you," she said lightly before her voice grew steely once more. "Move out," and the entire Namikaze clan saluted their commander before leaving. 2 weeks later, forward command tent, border of Oto. Naruto sighed as he entered the tent, only to smile seeing Kakashi. The white-haired man, while never outright supportive, had protected Naruto during his youth, and Naruto was happy to see more of him, especially since he hadn't been able to meet with him regularly after learning that he was his father's student. "Yo Kakashi," he said smiling. Kakashi smiled back at his sensei's son. "Hello Naruto. How are you?" he asked as he glanced back to the map of the area. Naruto shrugged. Pretty good." "What's up?" he asked as he moved to look at the map himself, seeing if he could be of any assistance. Kakashi sighed. "Nothing major, unfortunately. I was hoping to find some of these Sound Four, but all of our intel is weeks old, and the only lead we have is some strange forest to the north of here that seems to kill everyone who enters it," he replied sadly. Naruto frowned. "None of your scouts have come back?" he asked, curious. Kakashi shook his head. "No, and I want to send someone, but we are about to move camp so we can change our angle of attack, so most of our stronger shinobi are patrolling for security purposes right now," he answered. Naruto hummed and thought for a minute. "I think I might have a solution," he said, causing Kakashi to perk up. Hana said that the Haimaru triplets have been restless lately and she has been eager to test out her new skills in combat. Why not send her to check on the forest? I'll give her a high ration. "Oh. I totally forgot," he said before pausing and grabbing a high ration kunao and handing it to Kakashi. "If you ever need me, just throw it. I'm sure you know what to do," he added smiling. Kakashi stared in shock at the kunao, before his lone eye softened. Of course I do, I'll keep it safe unless I need you. Your father gave me his kunao as well, so I know how it works. Thank you, Naruto, and tell Hana she can go if she wishes. Just check in with me before she heads out, he said, placing the kunao on a chain around his neck. Naruto smiled brightly. Thanks, Kakashi, I know she'll appreciate it as well, he said before exiting the tent, letting the commander resume his planning. Several hours later, Death Forest, with Hana. Hana smiled brightly as she landed, barely even winded from the long-range running she and her companions had just completed. She was thoroughly pleased with the results that training with the painted dogs had yielded. She was easily high down in level now, and she planned on continuing to progress so she could fight alongside Naruto when the time came. However, she shook her head and focused on the present because she needed to keep her senses alert. After Naruto had informed her of a possible mission, Hana had swiftly met with Kakashi and learned all she could of the forest. Apparently, the only info he really had was that it was a trap, because you could walk in, but it was damn near impossible to get out, according to the rumors anyways. She looked to her three companions, who all gave her the canine equivalent of a nod, before they stepped into the forest, intent on finding all they could before returning safely to the new camp. So the four combatants quietly and slowly made their way into the wooded area. Hana didn't know why most shinobi would leap from tree to tree in an unknown area, but she just thought it was downright retarded. The dangers of missing a tree branch alone were scary, but all shinobi know where to set traps and you can't dodge in midair. But she shook her head again and focused on the forest, noticing how quiet it was. Hana frowned as she continued to press deeper into the woods. Something was wrong. There were no sounds, no signs of life whatsoever, just lush green life as far as the eye could see, which wasn't far in the gloom of the trees. She noticed several burrows of small animals, and even a nest or two, but where were all the animals? Hashimaru, the leader of the triplets, barked and jumped to the side along with his companions, just as four arrows slammed into where they once stood. Oh, that was rather good. I must say I am rather disappointed that you are traveling on the ground. My best traps are in the trees, said a disembodied voice. Hana frowned as she stood in a defensive position, having drawn some kunao. So sorry to ruin your fun, but isn't it polite to introduce yourself before we fight? She asked mockingly. The voice chuckled. Now why would I do that? Revealing myself to you would only make this more difficult. I much prefer to catch my prey before eating them, not talk with them, he replied. Hana frowned and heard some shuffling noises before dodging several more arrows, which she now realized were a deep golden color. My, you're quite a slippery fly. I'm going to enjoy feasting on you when you tire out, the voice said once again before laughing manically and launching several more arrows at Hana and her companions. Hana growled softly and continued to dodge for several minutes before getting angry. She couldn't even sense her opponent, and she could tell he was herding her into some sort of trap, as that seemed to be his angle. She landed and heard a snap before her eyes widened and she was impaled by dozens of wooden spears, only to turn into a log herself. Where'd you go? I was having so much fun, the voice came again. Hana sat on a branch several feet away, breathing heavily. She really needed to find this guy or get him to come her. She looked to her Ninken, who had also taken refuge in some areas. Well, if you want to play hide and seek, then I guess it's time to take this up a notch, the voice said again, growing serious. Hana's eyes widened and she swiftly jumped away as several arrows landed where she was, but this time they were trailed by the same gold substance that the arrows were made of. Hana growled in irritation. This guy was playing with her. She was fast, but nowhere near as fast as Naruto or the more speed-oriented girls, and this guy was firing arrows so quickly it was all she could do to dodge and not get hit. Unfortunately, the area soon became overcrowded with the arrows and their lines of gold, so much so that Hana couldn't dodge anymore and found that, when she jumped back, she ran right into the golden lining, causing her back and legs, along with her left arm, to become stuck to the substance. The voice chuckled evilly as Hana attempted to pull herself from the sticky goo and looked around to find her partners mostly in the same situation. He, finally, I've caught you, you little fly, he stated, his voice getting louder. Hana growled, yeah, so what? When I get free you're so going down, she yelled as a figure started to come through the bushes. Internally, however, her outward bravado wasn't all that reassuring. She couldn't think of a way to cut this strange gunk, having gotten her kunao stuck when she tried, and she needed to buy some time so she could get herself or one of her partners free, even if she could only see two of them at the moment. The figure chuckled once again and finally got close enough for Hannah to make out. He had 6 arms and a large of strange black markings over his body which Hannah identified as a curse mark. His skin was a dark black, his hair a lighter shade of gray, with some horns atop his head, so he had an absolutely feral look overall, but the thing that stood out the most was his third eye. It was focused solely on her and she shivered from the way it roamed her body. "You said it was proper to introduce yourself. Well, I am Kidomaru of the Sound 4, and what's your name, my cute little fly?" he asked as he advanced on her. Hannah scowled but decided to keep him talking and see if she could get anything out of him. "Hannah Inyazuka Namikaze," she replied curtly. Kidomaru's eyes widened slightly. "An Inyazuka? I haven't caught one of your before." "It'll be fun getting to know you before I have to turn you over," he said with a sick smile. Hannah's scowl disappeared and she decided to work a woman's best angle. "Turn me over? I'd much rather stay here and learn about this interesting gold stuff," she said with a slightly flirty undertone, motioning to the gold webbing that held her and her companions even as Kidomaru finally stopped just outside of her strike range. Hey, she had every intention of returning to Naruto, and if fake flirting with some guy got her what she needed, well, she could just laugh at his stupidity later. Kidomaru's eyes took on a perverted gleam. Well, it seems the fly wants the spider. I suppose I could tell you a few things before the next patrol comes from Otagakur, but you're going to have to really make it worth my while. I've heard you Inyazuka bitches are wild in bed and I'll be looking forward to that," he said lewdly as he stepped forward. Hannah beat down the urge to strike the man across his face, and smiled sweetly at him to hide her disgust. "Those rumors may or may not be true, but you'll never find out if I'm all tied up like this," she replied innocently. She noticed her companions all glaring and growling at Kidomaru before smirking at something behind him. "On second thought, I forgot to mention I'm engaged, so maybe you should just go die," she said with a sickly sweet smile. Kidomaru blinked in surprise before growling and beginning to form an arrow from his mouth before a scream ripped itself from his throat as Hashimaru jumped on his back and began to maul him. Kidomaru twisted and clawed, his 6 arms all trying to push the large dog off his back even as he crashed through the underbrush. Hannah, on the other hand, noticed the strange gold substance that he had dropped when Hashimaru had attacked him and thought back as she watched him make it. She quickly came to a conclusion and her free hand formed a chakra scalpel, even as she berated herself for not thinking of it before, and sliced right through the webbing. She smirked victoriously and made a clone to free her other companions before leaping after Kidomaru. She easily caught up to them just as Hashimaru was flung off of Kidomaru and she growled loudly before lunging at the spider-like man and thrusting her hand at his face. Kidomaru swung around just in time to stop the attack with his hand only for him to find it had gone numb. He cursed silently and began to fight the angered Inyazuka only to find he was severely outmatched, and her hits were doing internal damage to his arms. He cursed loudly and spit some gunk at her, only for her to slice it to bits, and to find that he had begun hand seals. "Cookie Yos no Jutsu," he yelled. "Summoning technique." Hannah quickly jumped back and stared into the cloud of smoke, looking for what the man had summoned. "I was just going to have some fun with you before you bitch, but now I'm gonna make sure it hurts." Kidomaru yelled as the smoke cleared and Hannah was left staring at the largest spider she had ever seen. "This is Kumo no Ju, Spider Queen, and she's going to enjoy feasting on you and your little friends. Enjoy your last moments on Earth, girl, because once she's poisoned you, I'm gonna enjoy myself before forcing you to watch as she eats your friends alive," he yelled before laughing insanely. Hannah growled loudly and glared at the insane man, like I'd let that happen. "If you wanna turn this into a summoning fight then fine by me," she yelled before running through signs herself and slamming her hand down with the same incantation as Kidomaru, summoning Hanta and his pack. "Kidomaru, let me introduce the painted dogs, and they don't like it when someone threatens to eat my companions," she said, causing Hanta's pack to growl and disperse into the wooded area. Kidomaru was a bit worried when he saw 8 wolf dog creatures appear, but he just smirked when he saw them disappear. "Your summons don't even seem to want to help you, you stupid bitch. I'm sure they just abandoned you because they know you're too weak to win against me," he said, smirking before tapping the giant spider. Said spider let out a screech and lowered itself to the ground before letting out a large egg of webbing from its rear, causing Hannah's eyes to widen. "That's gonna be troublesome," she thought before smirking as she noticed a pair of eyes behind the spider. "Think what you will, Kidomaru, my friends will never abandon me and I can't believe you fell for the same trick twice," she said, causing Kidomaru's eyes to widen and for him to spin around just in time to see a flaming whirlwind headed for the webbing. He screamed in rage and formed several arrows but was too late to stop the painted dog from slamming into the egg, destroying the spiders within. Kumo-no-Ju screeched in pain and anger and set her multifaceted eyes on Hana, who glared back as her companions joined her. She smirked at the spider, even as it charged, and rushed forward, throwing her body into a spin as her companions drilled around her, as she yelled, "Daigachuga!" Great fang over fang. The angered Spider Queen didn't stop, but Kidomaru jumped off her back and watched as the two forces collided. Hana struggled with her companions as they arched into the spider. Its skin was tough and she had to apply more chakra to her technique before she was able to pierce its shell. The beast screeched as it felt itself lose and the Inyazuka tear her way through its body, her companions destroying what was left. Kidomaru grimaced and fled. If she could kill his summon, she was far stronger than he gave her credit for. Hana landed, breathing difficult because of her chakra exertion, but smiled as she looked back. That creature was tough and she had been able to beat it without resorting to some of her more destructive techniques. She looked around for Kidomaru before frowning and sniffing the air, searching for his scent. It took her a few minutes but she was able to find it and they set out, intent on ending this fight. Fortunately for them, the battle was already over. Some ways away, Kidomaru was flying through the trees at a swift pace. He needed to warn the others of this woman, and if Konoha had others like her then they would have a hard time defending their borders. He jumped again only for his eyes to widen as a dog slammed into him from above, even as he cursed his own carelessness. He had been so worried about getting away from Hana that he had forgotten about her summons. Kidomaru immediately tried to punch the dog only to find all of his limbs being held down by a painted dog. He growled and thrashed but couldn't get free. Hanta slowly walked out of the nearby underbrush, growling his approval to his pack. He stepped up and put a paw on Kidomaru's chest. "You know I'm not in the habit of being cruel to our enemies but you were going to eat one of our friends, and that doesn't stand," he growled angrily before giving a canine smirk. "Besides I've always wondered what spider meat tasted like," he said before his powerful jaws clamped down on Kidomaru's neck and twisted, killing the man instantly. Hanta nodded to the rest of his pack and sat down as they disappeared with the body, their spoils of war. Hana soon landed and looked around for Kidomaru. "Worry not about the Spider-Man. He'll make for a good snack for the pups," Hanta said, causing Hana to blanch slightly before nodding. "Hey, he was gonna torture her anyways. I think you should get out of here and then rest, Hana-chan, it was a hard-fought battle," Hanta added. Hana nodded and thanked Hanta before heading out of the forest and resting. That was one of the sound 4 down. Back in Konoha, Namikaze Estate, late that same night. The full moon shone down on the Namikaze mansion and the surrounding woods. Unbeknownst to those asleep inside, several stealthy figures made their way through the underbrush. One figure stopped ahead and lifted one fist into the air, causing the figures to stop and await the next order. The lead figure slithered forward, its form being illuminated by the moonlight. The female Naga was stranger than the usual. It still had 6 arms, but all of them held scimitars. Its ears had many piercings and a lone jagged scar crossed her right eye. It was obvious this Naga had seen some rough battles. She hissed in pleasure as she stared at the Namikaze estates. "Lord Orokai will be most pleased if we strike a blow at those who defy him," she said before baring her sharp jagged teeth, "especially against that canine vermin who impedes his progress," she added before motioning her fellow Naga forward, intent on killing those inside the grounds. Unfortunately for her, an even stealthier figure stared down on the group and frowned. "There's no way I'm gonna let that happen," he thought angrily as he made a shadow clone and sent it ahead of the group. One Naga slithered forward to the leader even as the rest pressed forward towards the grounds. "Are you sure we should be here? Lord Orokai ordered us to aid in the unearthing of this ship," she said before finding herself pinned to a nearby tree with the leader holding her there. "Don't ever question my orders again. Lord Orokai will reward us greatly. Now attack," she yelled as she threw the Naga forward. Said Naga swiftly slithered away, not wanting to anger her leader more than necessary. Unfortunately she barely made it a few feet away before a toad landed on her and decapitated the unsuspecting Naga. The leader's eyes widened and she barely dodged Jiraiya's first attack even as the rest of her group was beset by Jiraiya's summoned allies. "Well, thank you for the information about Orokai's plans, but I'm afraid I won't let you any further. I failed that boy far too much to let anything happen to his happiness now," he stated as he dropped into his taijutsu stance. "So let's end this quickly because I have other things to do," he stated seriously. The Naga leader snarled and shot forward, only to find herself supremely outmatched. Jiraiya wasn't a Sunin for nothing, he had earned that title, and the Naga quickly learned that. Jiraiya switched from offense to defense as easily as breathing and used it to learn the Naga's patterns, which took him only a minute. The Naga soon found herself on the defensive as Jiraiya pressed his attack. Unfortunately for her, she lost track of her surroundings and was decapitated by the same toad who had killed her subordinate. Jiraiya looked around and noticed that the toads who had been successful during the surprise attack had teamed up and been able to kill the remaining Naga. He smiled and looked to the mansion. I may have screwed up all those years, but I'll be damned if I fail him again, he thought before heading off to report to Tsunade about Orochimaru's plans. So yeah, this is the end of this what if. I'm not really sure if it ended or it was just a cliffhanger. I don't really read the what ifs I put on my channel. Which, now that I think about it, that will probably get me in trouble eventually, but anyways, this is the end.